There is a feeling, so common in our modern world, that feels like running on a giant wheel that never stops. The scenery changes just enough to give the illusion of progress. A new job title, a new purchase, a new destination flashing before our eyes. But the motion is always the same. We run towards success. We run towards the expectations of others. We run towards the next fleeting moment of pleasure, and we run away from a quiet, persistent emptiness that seems to be always at our heels. We are conditioned for this race, taught from a young age to strive, to achieve, to acquire, to be more. And so we run, growing more tired with every turn of the wheel, our breath growing shorter, a subtle ache of the soul becoming a constant companion. This exhaustion, this deep, pervasive sense of being overwhelmed, is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is a shared human condition, a quiet epidemic of the spirit in an age of noise and endless striving. The anxiety that hums just beneath the surface, the stress that tightens our shoulders, the feeling of being adrift even when surrounded by abundance. These are not enemies that attack us from the outside. They are symptoms, born from the very way we have been taught to see the world and our place within it. We were given a map that promised happiness at the end of a long and difficult road. But for so many, that destination never seems to get any closer. But what if there is another map, one that is ancient, yet startlingly relevant? A map that does not ask you to run faster, but to simply stop, to stand still, and to look, not outwards, but inwards. This path does not offer an escape from life, but a deeper engagement with it. It suggests that the peace we are so desperately chasing in the outer world can only be found in the inner world. This journey begins not with a grand declaration, but with a simple, honest, and profoundly courageous question. A question that holds the key to unlocking our own cage. Why do we suffer? The wisdom of the Buddhist path does not offer a mystical, untouchable answer. Instead, it provides a clear, compassionate, and practical guide for us to investigate this question for ourselves, to uncover the roots of our own discontent, and to find the way out, not by changing the world, but by understanding our own mind. The Buddha's first teaching, the foundation upon which the entire path is built, is often compared to the diagnosis of a great physician. Imagine a doctor of unparalleled skill and compassion, one who does not merely treat symptoms, but who sees deeply into the very nature of an illness. This physician does not offer false hope or easy platitudes. The first step, the most crucial step, is a clear, honest, and unflinching diagnosis of the condition itself. This diagnosis is the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. In the ancient Pali language, the word for this is dukkha, and our entire modern struggle, the feeling of running on that wheel, is contained within this single, profound word. The English translation, suffering, is a good start, but it is incomplete. When we hear suffering, we tend to think of great tragedy, of immense physical pain, of deep, heartbreaking loss. And dukkha certainly includes all of these things. This is the most obvious level of its meaning, what is called dukkha, the suffering of pain. It is the pain of birth and the pain of sickness. It is the anguish of growing old, of our bodies weakening, our faculties fading. It is the sharp, undeniable grief that comes with the death of a loved one. It is the sting of betrayal, the ache of loneliness, the despair of a mind lost in depression. This is the suffering that no one can deny. It is woven into the fabric of life, a fundamental reality of having a human body and a human heart In a world of constant change, we spend so much of our energy trying to avoid this kind of pain, building walls of comfort and security, yet it inevitably finds its way in. This is the first layer of the diagnosis, the raw, overt pain of existence. But the great physician's diagnosis goes deeper. The second form of suffering is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is a far more subtle, and perhaps more pervasive, form of discontent. It is the suffering that arises from the fact that pleasant things do not last. Think of the immense effort we pour into creating moments of happiness. We plan the perfect vacation, and for a short time, there is joy, but the vacation ends, and the return to routine feels heavy. We get the promotion we've worked so hard for, and with it comes a brief sense of elation. But this soon gives way to new pressures, new responsibilities, and the goalpost of satisfaction simply moves further away. We fall in love, and the initial bliss feels like it will last forever. But relationships change, challenges arise, and the initial intensity fades. The happiness we grasp is like trying to hold water in our hands. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips away. This is the anxiety that underlies even our most joyful moments, the quiet knowledge that this too shall pass. It is the engine of our consumer culture, the constant need for the next new thing, the next upgrade, the next experience, to give us that temporary high, because the pleasure from the last one has already evaporated. The suffering here lies not in the experience itself, but in our clinging to it, our desperate demand that a fleeting moment become permanent. It is the friction between our desire for permanence and the universe's fundamental law of impermanence. This constant, low-grade stress of trying to hold on to what is always changing is a core feature of the modern condition. And still, the diagnosis goes deeper still, to the most profound level. This is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the most difficult to see, because it is the very water we swim in. It is a background hum of unsatisfactoriness, a fundamental tension that is part of being a self in the world. What is this self? It is a complex, ever-changing combination of physical body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. There is no solid, unchanging core, no permanent me at the center of it all. Yet, we live our lives as if there is. We spend our days defending this fragile sense of self, promoting it, worrying about it, trying to make it feel secure and happy. This is the exhaustion of maintaining a personal brand on social media, the anxiety of wondering what others think of us, the deep-seated fear of not being good enough. Sankhara dukkha is the inherent unreliability of our own existence. It's the feeling that even when things are going well, when there is no overt pain, and we have our pleasant moments, something is still not quite right. It's a subtle sense of lack, of incompleteness. It is the suffering that is woven into the very fabric of being a conditioned, dependent, and impermanent being. It is the ultimate source of that feeling of being on a hamster wheel, a sense of being driven by forces we don't fully understand, trapped in patterns of thought and behavior that lead to the same feelings of stress and disappointment over and over again. To truly understand the universality of this diagnosis, we can look to the ancient story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived in the time of the Buddha, and she had a young son whom she loved more than life itself. One day, her son fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful that it bordered on madness. She refused to accept his death, convinced there must be some medicine that could bring him back. She carried his small, lifeless body through her village, going from door to door, begging for a cure. Some people mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone suggested she go see the enlightened one, the Buddha. Clutching her child, she ran to him and pleaded for the miracle medicine. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion. He did not dismiss her. He did not tell her she was being foolish. He told her yes, he could help her, but first, she must bring him one thing, a single mustard seed. A simple task, she thought, her heart leaping with hope. But there was one condition. The mustard seed must come from a house where no one had ever died. Filled with renewed purpose, Kisa Gotami began her search once more. She went to the first house, her plea ready. I need a mustard seed for the great teacher. Can you spare one? Of course, the family said. But has anyone in this house ever known death? She asked. Remembering the condition, the family looked at her sadly. Oh, dear woman, they said. The living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our father just last year. She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. My husband died here. We lost our child here. Our parents passed away in this very room. She went to the richest houses and the poorest huts, and everywhere, the mustard seed was offered. But everywhere, the shadow of loss was present. As the day wore on, her frantic energy began to subside, replaced by a profound and quiet understanding. Her personal, unbearable grief started to transform into a deep recognition of a shared truth. She was not alone in her sorrow. Every single person she had met was carrying the same burden of loss. The death of her son was not a unique punishment inflicted only upon her. It was part of the universal nature of life itself. Looking down at the still form of her child, she finally saw not just her son, but the nature of impermanence. She carried him to the charnel ground, and as she laid him to rest, she said to herself, I was not the only one who has lost a son. This is a law that governs all life. She had found the mustard seed of wisdom, not in any house, but in the acceptance of this universal truth. She had taken the first step on the path to peace, not by denying suffering, but by seeing it, acknowledging it, and understanding it in its deepest sense. This is the purpose of the first noble truth. It is not a pessimistic declaration that life is miserable. It is a call to courage. It is an invitation to stop running, to turn around, and to look honestly at our own experience, just as Kisa Gotami did. It is permission to acknowledge the anxiety, the stress, the dissatisfaction, the pain, and the impermanence without judgment. It is the act of naming the sickness. To diagnose an illness is not to surrender to it. It is the first, essential step towards healing it. By understanding the nature of dukkha, we are not creating misery. We are revealing a truth that has been operating in the background all along. And once we have looked this truth in the eye, once we have dared to name it, a natural question arises. A question that moves us from diagnosis to investigation. If this is the condition, what is its cause? Where do these seeds of suffering truly come from? Having faced the diagnosis, the raw and undeniable truth of dukkha, we are not left in a state of despair. The great physician, having identified the illness, now points directly to its source. This is the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, known as samudaya. And here lies the most empowering revelation in this entire journey. The cause of our suffering is not to be found in the world outside of us. It is not our boss, our partner, our financial situation, or the state of the world that is the fundamental cause of our discontent. The root of suffering, the engine that drives the ceaseless wheel, is an internal force. It is a profound, relentless, and deeply ingrained thirst within our own minds. The Buddha called this thirst tanha. To understand tanha, we must see it as more than just simple desire or wanting. It is a compulsive energy, a deep, primal craving that constantly reaches out, seeking to grasp and hold on to things it believes will bring satisfaction, or to violently push away things it believes will bring pain. It is the restless energy that prevents our minds from ever being truly at peace. The inner voice that whispers, "I need this," or "I hate this," from the moment we wake until the moment we fall asleep. This thirst is not a single entity. It manifests in three distinct, yet interconnected ways. By understanding them, we can begin to see the hidden architecture of our own minds. The first and most obvious form is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst of our five senses. It is the craving for beautiful sights, pleasing sounds, enticing smells, delicious tastes, and pleasant physical sensations. In our modern world, this form of tanha has been amplified into a global industry. It is the endless scroll through social media feeds, our eyes hungry for the next novel image, the next entertaining video. It is the compulsive need to have music or a podcast playing at all times, to fill every moment of silence with sound. It is the multi-billion-dollar food and beverage industry, built entirely on our craving for specific tastes that bring momentary pleasure. It is the pursuit of physical comfort, sexual gratification, and the constant acquisition of material things that please us. We are conditioned to believe that satisfying these sensory cravings is the very definition of happiness. Yet, as we discovered in the first noble truth, any pleasure derived from the senses is by its very nature impermanent. The delicious meal ends, and we are left only with a memory. The new car loses its shine, the hit song becomes repetitive, the pleasure fades, but the thirst remains, now seeking its next target. This constant chase, this cycle of brief satisfaction, followed by renewed craving, is a primary source of our restlessness and dissatisfaction. The second, more subtle form of thirst is bhavatanha, the craving to be, to become, to exist. This is the thirst of the ego. It is the deep, powerful drive to establish and solidify a sense of self. It is the craving for identity. We see this everywhere in our culture of achievement. It is the relentless pursuit of a better job title, a larger salary, a bigger house, not just for the sensory pleasures they bring, but for what they say about who we are. It is the craving to be seen as successful, intelligent, attractive, or important. The entire world of social media is a monument to bhavatanha. We carefully curate our profiles, posting pictures of our travels, our accomplishments, our happy relationships, all in an effort to construct and project a desirable identity, craving the validation of likes and comments to affirm that this self we have created is real and valuable. This thirst also drives our clinging to beliefs, opinions, and ideologies. We identify with being a certain type of person politically, philosophically, or religiously, and we defend this identity fiercely because our sense of existence feels tied to it. This craving to become is a source of immense anxiety, because the self we are trying to build is, as we know, fundamentally unstable. It requires constant maintenance, constant external validation, and we live with the persistent, underlying fear that it might all collapse, that we might be exposed as a failure, a fraud, or simply a nobody. The third form of thirst is the dark twin of the second. It is vibhavatanha, the craving for non-existence, the craving to get rid of. This is the thirst for annihilation. When we are faced with a painful feeling, a difficult situation, or a person we dislike. This thirst arises as a powerful urge to destroy the source of our displeasure. It is the anger that flashes when we are criticized, the frustration that boils when our computer crashes, the deep irritation we feel when stuck in traffic. It is the desire to annihilate the unpleasant feeling itself. We try to numb our anxiety with alcohol, to distract ourselves from sadness with entertainment, to push away painful memories, refusing to look at them. This craving to not be, to get rid of, is the essence of aversion, of hatred, of ill will. It is a declaration of war on reality. We are demanding that life conform to our wishes, and when it doesn't, we react with aggression, either outward or inward. In its most extreme form, vibhavatana can manifest as self-harm or suicidal thoughts, the ultimate expression of the desire to annihilate a painful experience by annihilating the experiencer. These three thirsts for pleasure, for becoming, and for getting rid of affair, the secret fuel of our suffering, craving, and aversion, are two sides of the same coin. We are constantly trying to pull the pleasant towards us and push the unpleasant away, living in a state of perpetual tension and struggle with the natural unfolding flow of life. There is an old parable that illustrates this self-destructive process perfectly. A wild dog, starving and desperate, was roaming the forest. For days it had found nothing to eat, and the pain of its hunger was all-consuming. Finally, it came across a piece of meat, discarded by a hunter. Its craving was so intense, its hunger so absolute, that it did not hesitate. It fell upon the meat and began to devour it ravenously. For a moment, there was relief. The gnawing emptiness in its stomach was replaced by the savory taste of the meat. But the dog did not know that the hunter had laced the meat with a slow-acting poison. Soon after the initial relief, a terrible new pain began to burn in the dog's stomach, far worse than the hunger it had felt before. Confused and driven by its primal instinct, the dog made a fatal error in judgment. It thought the new pain was just a deeper form of hunger. It believed the solution to its agony was to consume even more of the meat. And so, it ate again, desperately trying to satisfy the craving it thought was the cause of its pain. But with every bite, it was ingesting more poison, and the burning intensified until, finally, it collapsed in agony and died. We are that dog, and Tana, our insatiable thirst, is its hunger. The poisoned meat is the object of our craving, the fleeting pleasure, the fragile identity, the temporary escape. We feel a fundamental unease, a dukkha, and we mistakenly believe that feeding our cravings will be the cure. We think one more purchase, one more promotion, one more drink, one more angry outburst to get our way will finally bring us lasting peace. But we are only ingesting more of the poison. The object of our craving is not the ultimate cause of our suffering. The craving itself, the very act of reaching, grasping, and clinging, is the poison. To see this is to change the entire game. The second noble truth does not place blame. It is not a moral failing to feel this thirst. It is a deeply conditioned, biological, and psychological part of being human. But seeing it for what it is, a clinical, impersonal cause for a predictable effect, is the beginning of freedom. It means we are not helpless victims of a cruel world. We are participants in our own liberation. The source of the problem is within us, and if that is true, then the solution must be within us as well. A new, hopeful question begins to form. If this burning thirst is the cause of all our anguish, is there a state where this thirst ceases? Is it possible to find a true and lasting peace? We have walked into the heart of the diagnosis, looking directly at the universal condition of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our existence. We have investigated its source, discovering it is not an external enemy, but an internal fire, the relentless thirst of tanha, which manifests as craving and aversion. To be left here would be a counsel of despair. It would be a diagnosis without a prognosis, a map that leads only into a barren wilderness. But the teaching of the great physician does not end with the cause of the illness. It proceeds to the most radical and hopeful message of all. This is the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, known as Nirodha. It is the simple, earth-shattering declaration that the fire of suffering can be put out, the thirst can be quenched. A state of profound and lasting peace is not a utopian fantasy, but an attainable human reality. Before we explore what this cessation is, it is crucial to understand what it is not. The concept of Nirodha and its result, nirvana, has often been misunderstood in the West as a kind of nihilistic self-annihilation. It is not. It is not the cessation of life. It is not becoming a void, an empty shell, or an unfeeling zombie. It is the cessation of the causes of suffering. It is the end of the fever, not the end of the patient. It is the radical unbinding of the mind from the compulsive grip of craving, the restless push of aversion, and the deep-seated confusion that fuels them both. It is a release into a state of supreme well-being, freedom, and clarity. The word nirvana itself literally means to extinguish or to blow out, not as one blows out a candle into darkness, but as one extinguishes a raging, destructive fire. What is left when this fire is put out? Not cold ash, but a profound and unshakable peace. This peace is not dependent on whether things are going our way. It is not the temporary calm that comes from finally getting what we want or successfully avoiding what we fear. It is a peace that underlies all experience, because the mind is no longer at war with reality. To grasp the nature of this state, which is ultimately beyond words, we must turn to metaphor. Imagine the fire of tanha. The craving for sense pleasure is like a fire that crackles and burns, always demanding more fuel in the form of new experiences. The craving to become is a hot, ambitious fire, striving to burn brighter and higher than all the others. The craving to get rid of is a fire of searing hatred and anger, consuming everything in its path. Our thoughts, our attachments, our fears. These are the fuel we continuously throw onto this blaze. Nirvana is the state when we simply stop supplying the fuel. We learn to see the fuel as fuel, and we gently put it down. The fire is not violently stamped out. It simply ceases to burn because its cause has been removed. What remains is not darkness, but a cool, spacious, and luminous calm. It is the feeling of relief when a raging fever finally breaks, leaving the body weak, but lucid and profoundly at peace. Another classic image is that of a lake. The ordinary mind is like the surface of a lake, constantly churned by the winds of wanting and not wanting. The wind of greed whips up waves of excitement and attachment. The wind of aversion creates choppy, violent currents of anger and fear. The water becomes murky with the mud of confusion, and the reflections on its surface are distorted and unreliable. We see the world not as it is, but through the violent ripples of our own reactivity. Nirodha, the cessation of this turmoil, is what happens when the winds die down. The mind lake becomes perfectly still and transparent. The sediment of confusion slowly settles to the bottom. For the first time, we can see all the way to the depths, and the surface reflects the sky, the trees, and the mountains with perfect, undistorted clarity. This clarity is wisdom. This stillness is peace. This is nirvana, not as a distant heaven, but as the mind's own natural, pristine state, revealed when the agitations have ceased. Perhaps the most powerful metaphor is that of space. Our normal sense of self, the ego we defend so fiercely, is like being confined to a small, windowless room. The walls are built from our beliefs, our memories, our fears, our ambitions, the entire story of I, me, and mine. We spend our lives decorating this room, defending its walls from attack, and constantly bumping into their restrictive confines. It can feel safe, but it is a prison. Nirvana is the experience of these walls dissolving, not through a violent explosion, but a gentle fading, as we realize they were never solid in the beginning. Suddenly, there is no room. There is only vast, open, boundless space. The suffocating pressure of the ego is released. There is a profound sense of freedom, of ease, of connection with everything, because the artificial barrier between self and other has become transparent. This points to the most revolutionary aspect of nirvana. It is not a place you go to after death. It is a reality to be experienced here and now. It is a psychological state, a way of being in the world with a free and untroubled heart. To underscore this practicality and urgency, the Buddha told the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man was shot in the forest by an arrow coated in a deadly poison. His friends and family rushed to his side, frantic to find a surgeon to remove the arrow and save his life. But the wounded man held up his hand and stopped them. "Wait," he commanded. "Before you remove this arrow, I must know certain things. Who was the man who shot me? Was he of the noble caste, the priestly caste, or the merchant caste? What is his name, and what family does he belong to? Was he tall or short? What kind of wood was the bow made from? What kind of sinew was used for the bowstring? What type of bird did the feathers on the arrow's shaft come from?" The Buddha asked his monks, "What do you think would happen to this man?" The monks replied that the man would surely die, his questions unanswered, long before the surgeon could help him. The Buddha agreed. "In the same way," he said, "the spiritual life does not depend on speculative views about whether the world is eternal or not eternal, whether the soul and the body are the same or different. I have not taught these things because they are not useful. They are not connected to the goal. They do not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to awakening, to nirvana. The one thing he did teach," he explained, "was the reality of suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path to that cessation. The arrow is dukkha, suffering. The poison is tanha, craving, and aversion. We have all been shot. Nirvana is not about endlessly analyzing the arrow. It is not some complex metaphysical state we must define before we can act. Nirvana is simply the state of health and well-being that arises naturally when the arrow has been skillfully removed and the wound has been healed. It is the freedom from the poison's torment. The third noble truth is the physician's confident prognosis. The arrow can be removed, the poison can be neutralized, and the wound can be healed completely. This truth is the turning point of the entire journey. It transforms the path from a grim struggle against misery into a joyful and hopeful process of healing and discovery. It tells us that peace is not something we have to build, create, or earn. It is our inherent nature, our birthright, which has been temporarily obscured. The sun is always shining, even on the cloudiest day. Nirodha is the truth that the clouds can and will part. This definitive statement of possibility, this promise of a cure, leads us to the final, most crucial question of all. If we have been diagnosed, if the cause has been identified, And if we are assured that a cure exists, what, then, is the medicine? What is the practical, step-by-step prescription for removing the arrow and realizing this freedom for ourselves? We have arrived at the heart of the great physician's wisdom. We have acknowledged the universal sickness of dukkha. We have identified its precise cause in the inner thirst of tanha, and we have received the hopeful prognosis that a complete cure, a state of lasting peace called nirodha, is possible. This naturally brings us to the final and most practical part of the teaching. It is the prescription itself. It is the medicine. This is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, known in Pali as magga. This path is not a set of divine commandments to be followed out of fear, nor is it a collection of abstract philosophical ideas. It is a tangible, detailed, and holistic blueprint for living a human life skillfully. It is the noble Eightfold Path, the instructions for how to remove the poisoned arrow of suffering from our own heart, and how to heal the wound for good. The first thing to understand about this path is that it is not a linear sequence of steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one by one and then leave behind. It is more like the 8 interwoven strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand lends its strength to the others, and only when they are all cultivated together does the rope have the integrity to pull us to the shore of liberation. These 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential aspects of training: a complete curriculum for the human being, ethical conduct, or sila, mental discipline, or samadhi, and wisdom, or panya. To make this tangible, imagine we are setting out on a great voyage across a vast and unpredictable ocean, the ocean of existence. The far shore is nirvana, the land of peace. The noble Eightfold Path is our vessel and our guide for this journey. The first division, ethical conduct, or sila, is the very hull of our ship. It is the foundation of our vessel, providing integrity, buoyancy, and safety. If the hull is rotten, full of holes from unethical actions, then no matter how skilled our navigator or how powerful our sails, we will inevitably take on water and sink. A spiritual journey cannot be undertaken without a firm grounding in ethical living. It ensures we are not causing harm to ourselves or others, creating the stability necessary for the deeper work of the mind. The second division, mental discipline, or samadhi, is the sails and the rudder of our ship. This is the dynamic, active part of our training. It is how we learn to harness the powerful winds of our own mental energy, rather than being thrashed about by them. It is how we learn to steer the ship of our life with intention, focus, and clarity, navigating through storms of emotion and periods of becalmed listlessness. Without mental discipline, our ship is adrift, at the mercy of every passing current of thought and feeling. The third division, wisdom, or panya, is the map, the compass, and the lighthouse on the distant shore. It is our sense of direction. It is the understanding of where we are, where we are going, and why the journey is necessary. Without wisdom, even the sturdiest ship with the most powerful sails is lost. We might sail in circles for a lifetime, mistaking motion for progress, busy but going nowhere. Wisdom provides the context and the liberating insight that fuels the entire voyage. With this framework in mind, let's look at the 8 individual strands that make up this path. The journey begins with the division of wisdom. The very first path factor is right understanding, or samma ditthhi. This is the correct map. It is the clear-eyed comprehension of the 4 noble truths themselves. It means understanding on both an intellectual and an intuitive level, the nature of suffering, its true cause in our own craving, the possibility of its cessation, and the nature of the path that leads to that cessation. It is the fundamental shift in perspective from blaming the world for our problems to taking radical responsibility for our own inner state. Right understanding is the North Star by which we navigate the entire journey. The second factor of wisdom is right thought, also translated as right intention or samasankappa. If right understanding is the map, right intention is the act of aligning the rudder of our heart with the direction shown on that map. It is about purifying our deepest motivations. This involves cultivating three types of intention. The intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go of our clinging to pleasure and ego. The intention of loving kindness, which is the active cultivation of goodwill towards all beings without exception. And the intention of compassion, which is the deep aspiration to see all beings free from their suffering. It is the conscious choice to orient our mind away from greed, hatred, and cruelty, and towards generosity, love, and kindness. Next, we come to the division of ethical conduct, the hull of our ship. This is where wisdom begins to manifest in our tangible interactions with the world. The third factor is right speech, or samma vaca. This is the practice of using our words consciously as tools for creating truth and harmony rather than conflict and confusion. It involves abstaining from 4 types of harmful speech: lying, divisive speech that sets people against each other, harsh or abusive speech, and idle chatter or gossip that wastes our own time and mental energy and that of others. Right speech is the commitment to speak truthfully, kindly, helpfully, and at the right time. The fourth factor is right action, or samma kammanta. This involves aligning our physical actions with our intention of non-harming. The core of right action is abstaining from 3 main actions: taking life or causing harm to any living being, taking what is not given, or stealing in all its forms, and sexual misconduct, which means engaging in sexual behavior that causes harm to ourselves or others through exploitation or betrayal. It is the practice of making our body an instrument of peace and safety in the world. The fifth factor is right livelihood, or samma aiva. This extends our ethical commitment into our professional lives. It is the practice of earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not cause harm. This means avoiding professions that are based on deceit, such as false advertising, on exploitation, such as the trading of weapons or human beings, or on causing harm, such as selling intoxicants or working in a slaughterhouse. It is about finding a way to contribute to society that is in harmony with our deepest values of compassion and integrity. Finally, we arrive at the division of mental discipline, the sails and rudder that steer our vessel. The sixth factor is right effort, or samavayama. This is the engine of the path. It is not about grim, white-knuckled striving, but about applying our energy in a skillful and balanced way. This involves a fourfold practice: the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states of mind from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states of mind that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and develop these wholesome states. It is the art of being a wise and diligent gardener of our own mind. The seventh factor is right mindfulness, or samma sati. This is perhaps the most well-known aspect of the path in the modern world. It is the quality of clear, non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. It is the rudder that keeps us on course. Through mindfulness, we learn to observe the ever-changing landscape of our own experience, our bodily sensations, our feelings, our thoughts, without getting lost in them. Mindfulness is the faculty that allows us to see this is suffering, this is craving, this is a thought, without being swept away. It is the foundation of self-awareness. The eighth and final factor is right concentration, or samma samadhi. If mindfulness is the rudder, concentration is the deep keel that keeps the ship stable, even in rough seas. It is the practice of unifying the mind, of developing the ability to place our attention on a single object and keep it there. This practice calms the choppy waves of discursive thought, leading to deep states of inner tranquility and power. A concentrated mind is a clear and penetrating mind, capable of seeing the deep truths of existence that a scattered mind can never perceive. This is the noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete and integrated system for human flourishing. It is a path of beauty, balance, and profound common sense. It shows us how to live in the world with integrity, how to cultivate a heart of kindness and compassion, and how to train our mind to be a tool of liberation rather than an instrument of torture. The entire structure, from our conduct to our concentration, is held together and given direction by wisdom. And that wisdom, that right understanding, which forms the very first step, must be built upon a clear comprehension of the universal law that governs our lives, the law of cause and effect. To truly understand our journey, we must first understand the force that has propelled us to this very point, the force of karma. The great voyage across the ocean of existence, guided by the noble Eightfold Path, begins with a single, crucial element: right understanding. It is the map that gives the entire journey its direction and purpose. But for this map to be of any use, we must first comprehend the fundamental law of the landscape we are traversing. We must understand the natural law that governs why things happen the way they do, the principle that underpins all of our experiences of happiness and sorrow. This is the universal law of cause and effect, known in the East as karma. There is perhaps no spiritual concept more widely known in the West, and yet there is no concept more profoundly misunderstood. To grasp its true meaning is to move from a worldview of chance and injustice to one of clarity, responsibility, and empowerment. The popular Western idea of karma is often a caricature. It's seen as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping system, a celestial scoreboard where good deeds earn points and bad deeds earn demerits. It's conflated with fate or destiny, a rigid, predetermined script for our lives that we are powerless to change. It's imagined as a form of divine revenge, where the universe gets you back for your transgressions. This entire picture is a distortion. The Buddhist understanding of karma is far more subtle, immediate, and scientific. It is not a system of reward and punishment administered by an external judge. Karma is an impersonal, natural law, as fundamental and reliable as the law of gravity. Gravity doesn't punish you for stepping off a cliff. It simply operates. In the same way, karma is the law that intentional actions have corresponding results. The Buddha's own definition was breathtakingly simple and direct. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This is the key that unlocks the entire teaching. Karma is not the event that happens to you. Karma is the volitional force behind the actions you perform. It is the intention, the will, the motive that propels your every word, deed, and thought. An action done accidentally, without intention, produces a different result than the very same action done with a deliberate purpose. The quality of the inner forge of the heart is what shapes our world. This understanding immediately liberates us from the tyranny of fate. Fate implies we are passive puppets of a pre-written story. Karma reveals that we are the authors of our own story. The past has certainly shaped the present or actions. Yesterday have created the conditions we face today, but our actions right now are shaping the future we will experience tomorrow. The power is not in the stars, but in the sanctuary of our own mind. We create karma through 3 doorways: the body, speech, and the mind. The karma of the body, or kaya, karma, refers to our physical actions. It is the difference between an arm raised to strike someone in anger and an arm raised to help someone who has fallen. The karma of speech, or vaki, kama, refers to our words. A word spoken with the intention to deceive or wound plants a very different seed than a word spoken with the intention to heal or clarify. But the most fundamental and powerful of these is the karma of the mind, or mano karma. This is because every intentional word and deed is born first in the mind, as a thought, a motive, an intention. The mind is the source. You can perform a seemingly generous act, like donating to charity, but if the underlying intention is to boost your own ego or to show off, the karmic seed is one of pride and attachment. Conversely, a small, unseen act of kindness, born from a pure intention of compassion, can plant a powerful seed of happiness. This is why the inner work of the path is so crucial. The outer world we experience is a reflection of the inner world we cultivate. To understand this process, we can use the simple, timeless metaphor of a farmer. Our mind is a field. Our consciousness is the rich soil. Our intentions are the seeds we hold in our hand. Our actions of body, speech, and mind are the act of planting those seeds. The circumstances and experiences of our life, both happy and sad, are the harvest. The law of karma is simply the law of agriculture. If you plant the seeds of an apple tree, you will, in due time and with the right conditions, harvest apples. You will never harvest thorns from an apple seed. If you plant the seeds of a poison ivy vine, you will harvest a rash. You will never get nourishing fruit from a seed of poison. The process is natural, predictable, and impersonal. The field doesn't judge the farmer. It simply grows what is planted. In Buddhist psychology, actions, or karmas, are categorized not as good or bad in a moralistic sense, but as skillful or unskillful, kusala or akusala. Akusala karma, unskillful or unwholesome action, is any action rooted in what are known as the 3 poisons: greed, which is the energy of clinging, craving, and selfish desire; hatred, which is the energy of aversion, anger, ill will, and cruelty; and delusion, which is the energy of ignorance, confusion, and not seeing things as they truly are. When we speak a harsh word out of anger, when we take something that isn't ours out of greed, when we cling to a harmful ideology out of delusion, we are planting the seeds of poison ivy. The immediate result is an agitation in our own mind, and the long-term result is a harvest of suffering, conflict, and unhappiness. Kusala karma, skillful or wholesome action, is any action rooted in the opposites of these poisons: generosity and letting go, loving, kindness and compassion, and wisdom and clarity. When we act from a place of genuine care, when our words are kind, when our thoughts are compassionate, we are planting the seeds of an apple tree. The immediate result is a sense of ease and integrity in our own heart, and the long-term result is a harvest of happiness, peace, and harmonious relationships. The choice of which seeds to plant is always ours. This understanding is the ultimate empowerment. It means we are never truly stuck. Whatever our current situation is, however difficult our harvest may seem, it is the result of seeds planted in the past. We cannot change the seeds that were planted yesterday, but the soil of the present moment is always here, ready and waiting. Right now, in this moment, we have the power to choose. We can continue to unconsciously sow the same old seeds of anger, anxiety, and grasping that have brought us the harvest of suffering we are so tired of reaping. Or we can choose, with conscious intention, to begin planting new seeds. We can plant a seed of patience instead of anger. We can plant a seed of generosity instead of greed. We can plant a seed of mindfulness instead of distraction. Each moment is a new opportunity to tend our inner garden. This is not a promise of instant result. The farmer who plants an apple seed today does not get a full-grown tree tomorrow. It requires patience, diligence, and care, which is the essence of the Eightfold Path. But the law is certain. The planting of wholesome seeds will inevitably lead to a wholesome harvest. Understanding karma removes the question, "Why is this happening to me?" and replaces it with the more powerful and constructive questions. What am I planting right now? What seeds am I sowing with my thoughts, my words, and my actions in this very moment? With this law of cause and effect as our foundational understanding, the path ahead becomes clear. If our intentions are the seeds that create our world, then the most vital and practical work we can undertake is the purification and training of our own mind. We must learn to become conscious farmers of our inner landscape. This leads us directly to the next step of our journey, to look deeply at the quality of our thoughts themselves, and to learn how to cultivate a garden that yields the fruit of peace rather than the thorns of suffering. Having understood the profound and impersonal law of karma, that our intentional actions shape our reality, we are brought face to face with the forge where all karma is created, the human mind. The noble Eightfold Path, in its profound wisdom, takes us directly to this source. After establishing right understanding as our guiding map, it presents the second factor, right thought, or as it is often translated, right intention. This is the art of becoming a conscious steward of our inner world. It is the practice of moving from being a passive victim of our own mental chatter to becoming a skillful gardener of the mind, consciously choosing which seeds of thought to plant and water, and which to gently weed out. Our minds, left to their own devices, produce thoughts ceaselessly, like a waterfall cascading down a mountainside. Much of this mental activity is automatic, a product of years of conditioning, ingrained habits, and deep-seated instincts. Thoughts of worry, resentment, jealousy, and desire can bubble up without any conscious invitation. They are the weeds that grow naturally in any untended garden. To practice right thought is not to attempt the impossible task of stopping this waterfall. It is not a violent suppression of our thoughts, which only creates more tension. Rather, it is the gentle, consistent, and deliberate practice of choosing which streams of thought we will allow to flow and nourish our inner landscape, and which we will allow to pass by without giving them our energy. It is the difference between being swept away by the current and learning to channel the water to irrigate a beautiful garden. The Buddha identified two opposing classes of thought. On one side are the unskillful, cool, wholesome thoughts, the weeds rooted in the three poisons, thoughts of greed and sensual craving, thoughts of ill will and hatred, and thoughts of cruelty and harm. On the other side are the thoughts that form the substance of this practice, the three facets of right thought. The first is the thought of renunciation. In our modern culture, the word renunciation can sound harsh, suggesting a life of bleak deprivation. But in this context, Its meaning is one of liberation. It is the thought of letting go. It is the inner wisdom that recognizes the stress, anxiety, and ultimate dissatisfaction that comes from constantly clinging to fleeting pleasures, possessions, and even our own opinions. The thought of renunciation is the quiet voice within that says, I don't need this new gadget to be happy. When faced with a powerful, consumerist urge, it is the decision to release a long-held grudge, recognizing that the resentment is harming us far more than it is harming the other person. It is the wisdom to loosen our grip on our own ego, to admit when we are wrong, and to stop defending an identity that is ultimately fragile and illusory. This is not a thought of self-denial. It is a thought of profound self-compassion. It is the recognition that true freedom lies not in getting everything we want, but in freeing ourselves from the compulsive wanting itself. It is the antidote to the poison of greed. The second facet of right thought is the thought of loving kindness or goodwill. This is the intention that actively opposes all forms of hatred, anger, and aversion. It is the conscious choice to cultivate an attitude of friendliness and benevolence toward all beings, without exception. This practice begins with ourselves, replacing the voice of the inner critic with one of acceptance and care. It then extends outwards. When someone frustrates us, the automatic, unskillful thought is one of irritation and judgment. The practice of right thought is to notice this and to gently, intentionally replace it with a thought of goodwill. May they be well. May they be happy. This is not a sentimental exercise or a denial of harm. It is a pragmatic technique for protecting our own heart. Anger and hatred are poisons that burn us first. By cultivating thoughts of loving kindness, we are administering the antidote to our own minds. We are choosing to inhabit a mental space of warmth and peace, rather than one of coldness and conflict. The third facet is the thought of harmlessness or compassion. This flows naturally from loving kindness, but is distinct from it. While loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. It is the heart's response to the pain of another. It is the intention that directly opposes all thoughts of cruelty, malice, and indifference. When we see suffering, either in front of us or on the news, the thought of compassion is the gentle trembling of the heart that says, may they be free from that pain. This intention is the very root of ethical action. It is what motivates us to help, to protect, and to care for one another. It dismantles our selfish concerns and connects us to our shared humanity. By cultivating thoughts of compassion, we transform our mind from a fortress of self-interest into a source of healing for the world. There is a timeless story, told in many cultures, that perfectly illustrates this inner work. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, inside of me, there is a terrible fight going on. It is a fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and lies. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, and truth. The grandchild thinks about this for a moment and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win the fight?" The old man replies simply, "The one you feed." The practice of right thought is the practice of consciously choosing which wolf to feed. Our unwholesome, automatic thoughts are the evil wolf, snarling for our attention. Our wholesome, cultivated intentions are the good wolf, waiting patiently. Every time we indulge in a resentful fantasy, we are feeding the wolf of hatred. Every time we dwell on what we lack, we are feeding the wolf of greed. Conversely, every time we intentionally generate a thought of gratitude, we are feeding the wolf of joy. Every time we choose to wish someone well, even when it is difficult, we are feeding the wolf of loving kindness. The practice itself is simple, though not always easy. It begins with mindfulness, the gentle awareness of our own mental landscape. We learn to recognize an unwholesome thought as it arises, without judging ourselves for it. There is anger, there is jealousy. We see it clearly, not as I am angry, but as a thought of anger has arisen in the mind. In that space of recognition, we have a choice. We can either get on the train of that thought and follow it down its destructive path, or we can simply let the train leave the station without us. Then, we can perform the crucial act of replacement. We can consciously introduce the thought's opposite. In the place of a resentful thought, we can actively recall a person's good qualities, or simply repeat the phrase, "May you be at peace." At first, this may feel mechanical, but like strengthening a muscle, with consistent practice, it becomes more natural, more authentic. We are literally rewiring the habitual pathways of our brain. This inner cultivation is the source from which all other ethical conduct flows. A mind that has been consistently trained in thoughts of letting go, of loving kindness, and of compassion will naturally produce words that are gentle, truthful, and helpful. It will naturally guide the body to perform actions that are peaceful and supportive. The inner work of right thought is not a hidden, selfish activity. It is the most profound gift we can give to the world, for it ensures that when we do engage with others, we do so from a place of clarity and kindness. Our thoughts are the blueprint for the world we create, both inside and out. By learning to draw that blueprint with wisdom and care, we begin to express our inner peace through the very way we speak. As the inner garden of the mind is tended through right thought, its cultivated qualities of kindness and clarity naturally seek expression. The first and most immediate bridge between our inner world and the outer world is our speech. Words are the currency of our relationships, the tools with which we build connection or create conflict. The third factor of the Noble Eightfold Path and the first pillar of ethical conduct is right speech, or samavacha. This is the practice of transforming our communication from an unconscious, reactive habit into a mindful, compassionate, and powerful force for good. In our modern age of relentless communication, where a thought can be broadcast to the world in an instant from a device in our pocket, the practice of right speech is no longer an obscure ethical guideline. It is an essential survival skill for anyone seeking a life of peace and integrity. We need only reflect for a moment to see how much of our daily suffering is caused or exacerbated by unskillful words. A harsh comment from a boss can ruin our day. An unkind remark from a loved one can wound us deeply. The endless, divisive chatter of social media can leave us feeling anxious and isolated. In the same way, we ourselves have wielded this power, often unconsciously. We have spoken impatiently. We have exaggerated to make a point. We have participated in gossip, and we have used sarcasm as a weapon. Each time, we have planted a small seed of suffering in the world and in our own hearts. Right speech is the art of recognizing the profound power of our words and vowing to use them with the same care. A surgeon uses a scalpel not to wound, but to heal. The practice is traditionally defined by what we abstain from, highlighting the four main ways our speech can become unskillful. By turning these abstentions into active, positive practices, we can create a clear guide for our daily interactions. The first pillar is the practice of truthfulness, abstaining from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling deliberate lies, but its scope is far broader. It includes the subtle exaggerations we use to make our stories more impressive, the white lies we tell to avoid minor inconveniences, and the promises we make with no real intention of keeping. In the workplace, it's the temptation to misrepresent progress on a project or subtly shift blame for a mistake. In our personal lives, it is the slow erosion of trust that comes from a pattern of small deceptions. On social media, it is the creation of a carefully curated, false persona that presents a life devoid of struggle or difficulty. To practice truthfulness is to commit to reality. It brings a radical simplicity to our lives. When we speak the truth, we no longer need to maintain a complex web of lies, remembering who we told what. Our inner and outer worlds begin to align, creating a foundation of personal integrity and trustworthiness that is deeply calming for ourselves and for those around us. The second pillar is the practice of harmony, abstaining from divisive speech. This is the commitment to not use our words to set people against one another. Its most common form is slander and gossip. It is speaking about someone who is not present in a way that would damage their reputation or our listeners' opinion of them. In an office environment, this is the toxic chatter of politics, where we might speak ill of one colleague to gain favor with another, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and rivalry. In our polarized world, this form of speech is an epidemic. Online algorithms often reward the most divisive and outrageous statements, fueling a culture of us versus them. The practice of right speech invites us to become agents of peace. It means refusing to participate in gossip, even when it feels like a way to bond with others. It means actively looking for the good in people, and when we must speak of difficult situations, doing so with the aim of understanding and reconciliation, not creating further division. It is the conscious choice to use our words to build bridges, not walls. The third pillar is the practice of gentleness, abstaining from harsh speech. This is the vow to not use our words as weapons. Harsh speech includes yelling, insulting, belittling, and name-calling. It also includes the more subtle violence of sarcasm, mockery, and passive-aggressive comments designed to inflict a subtle sting. The anonymity of the internet has made this form of speech frighteningly common. We see it in the comment sections of news articles and social media, where people say things to one another they would likely never say face-to-face. But it also appears in our most intimate settings, the impatient, sharp tone we use with our children when we are stressed, or the cutting remark we direct at our partner in the heat of an argument. To practice gentleness is to recognize that the way we say something is as important as what we say. It is possible to express disagreement, to set a boundary, or to give feedback without resorting to verbal violence. It requires us to pause, to breathe, and to choose words that are constructive and kind, even when we are feeling angry or hurt. It is the practice of making others feel safe in our verbal presence. The fourth and final pillar is the practice of purposeful speech, abstaining from idle chatter. This is perhaps the most challenging practice in our age of information overload. Idle chatter is speech that is empty, useless, and leads nowhere. It is the endless speculation about celebrities, the mindless forwarding of trivial content, the participation in pointless debates about things that are beyond our control. It is speech that simply adds to the noise of the world without adding to its wisdom or beauty. The practice of purposeful speech is not a vow of absolute silence. It is an invitation to value our own attention and the attention of others. It asks us to consider, is what I am about to say necessary? Is it useful? Is it interesting or amusing in a wholesome way? Or is it just filling silence? This practice helps us cultivate a quieter, more focused mind. We become less reactive, less compelled to comment on everything. We learn to appreciate the value of noble silence. And when we do choose to speak, our words carry more weight and intention. To bring these 4 pillars into our daily life, we can use a simple, powerful mindfulness tool. Before we speak, especially in a situation that feels charged or important, we can quickly ask ourselves a series of 5 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial or useful? Is it the right time to say it? And if the answer to all of these is yes, then we can speak with confidence, knowing our words are aligned with our deepest intentions for peace. By practicing right speech, we are doing more than just being polite. We are actively shaping our karma, our character, and our world. Every time we choose truth over deception, harmony over division, gentleness over harshness, and purpose over triviality, we are performing an act of generosity. We are offering the gifts of clarity, safety, and peace to everyone we interact with. This inner discipline of the tongue is the first outward sign of a mind that is being tamed. And just as our wholesome thoughts find their voice in skillful speech, these two together create the clear and compassionate blueprint for our physical engagement with the world. When our mind and our words are in harmony, our body naturally follows, leading us to the next step on the path, the practice of right action. As our inner world is clarified by right thought, and our communication is purified by right speech, the path naturally guides us to the physical embodiment of our intentions. Our bodies, our physical presence in the world, become the next field of practice. This is the 4th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right action, or Samma Kammanta. It is the 2nd pillar of our ethical training, the practice of making our every physical act an expression of compassion and wisdom. If right speech is about ensuring our voice is a source of healing, right action is about ensuring our very presence is a source of safety. It is the commitment to move through the world in a way that protects life, honors others, and brings about peace rather than harm. The guiding star for all right action is the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. This is the profound and active intention to avoid causing injury or suffering to any living being, including ourselves. Right action is not merely a list of rules to be followed mechanically. It is the living, breathing application of this compassionate intention to our physical behavior. The practice is traditionally outlined through 3 core precepts, 3 areas where we commit to exercising restraint and mindfulness. When explored deeply, these 3 guidelines expand to cover the entire spectrum of our engagement with the world. The first pillar of right action is abstaining from taking life. This is the most fundamental commitment to non-harming. On its most obvious level, it is the vow to not intentionally kill another human being or any living creature. It is a radical respect for the sanctity of life, a recognition that all beings, from the largest mammal to the smallest insect, share a common desire to live and to avoid pain. But in our complex, interconnected world, this practice extends far beyond direct, personal acts of violence. It calls us to examine the far-reaching consequences of our collective actions. This is the practice of environmental stewardship. Our daily choices as consumers, what we buy, what we eat, what we waste, have a direct impact on ecosystems across the globe, leading to the destruction of habitats and the extinction of entire species. To practice abstaining from taking life in the 21st century is to practice mindful consumption, to reduce our impact, to support sustainability, and to advocate for the health of the planet that is our only home. It also invites us to consider how our money and attention might support systems that perpetuate violence, whether it's investing in companies that manufacture weapons or consuming media that glorifies cruelty. On a personal level, this precept is a deep training in gentleness. It is choosing to carefully trap a spider and release it outside, rather than swatting it in a moment of fear or irritation. It is handling objects with care, closing a door quietly, and moving with a physical grace that reflects an inner state of peace. It is about taming the aggressive, reactive impulses of the body and replacing them with a consistent, gentle reverence for all existence. The second pillar of right action is abstaining from taking what is not given. This is the practice of respecting the property and efforts of others, commonly known as not stealing. Again, the obvious meaning is clear. We do not take someone's wallet or burglarize their home, but the subtle applications of this principle in modern life are vast. It includes the realm of intellectual property. Illegally downloading films, music, and software is a form of taking the creative work of others without their consent. In our professional lives, it can manifest as time theft, being paid for a full day's work while spending hours on personal matters, or using company resources for our own benefit without permission. In the world of business and innovation, it is the act of stealing a colleague's idea and presenting it as our own, or engaging in deceitful practices to gain an unfair market advantage. At its heart, this precept is about honesty and fairness. It is the recognition that we should not take that which we have not earned or been freely given. The positive cultivation of this practice is the spirit of generosity. When we are not focused on taking, we naturally open up to giving. We practice generosity with our material resources, sharing what we can. We are generous with our time and energy, helping others without expecting anything in return. By respecting the belongings and contributions of others, we build a foundation of trust and mutual respect that is essential for a healthy society. The third pillar of right action is abstaining from sexual misconduct. This is the practice of bringing respect, care, and mindfulness into our intimate lives. In a world where sexuality is often used for commercial exploitation and selfish gratification, this practice is a powerful statement of compassion and integrity. At its core, this precept is about not using our sexuality to cause harm to ourselves or others. This most fundamentally concerns consent. Any sexual activity that involves coercion, manipulation, deceit, or taking advantage of a power imbalance is a profound violation of this principle. It means ensuring that any intimate engagement is built on a foundation of clear, enthusiastic, and ongoing consent from all involved. It is also a call to move beyond objectification. So much of modern culture encourages us to see others, and even ourselves, as objects for sexual use, rather than as whole, complex human beings. This precept invites us to connect with others in our intimate lives with a sense of reverence for their full humanity, their feelings, their history, and their dignity. It means not breaking promises of fidelity and not engaging in intimate acts that we know will cause emotional pain and betray the trust of another. It is the commitment to ensure that our sexuality is an expression of connection, kindness, and mutual respect, rather than a vehicle for selfish craving and harm. Taken together, these three pillars guide us to see our own body as a sacred instrument It is the vehicle through which our karma is enacted upon the world. With every gesture, every step, every physical act, we are either contributing to the world's suffering or to its healing. When we practice right action, we become a walking sanctuary. People feel safe around us. They can trust that we will not harm them, steal from them, or exploit them. We create a circle of peace that begins with our own physical form and radiates outwards. Our actions become a quiet sermon, a demonstration of the peace that is possible when the heart is guided by compassion. This solid, ethical foundation in our personal behavior, speech, and our actions provides the stability we need for the deeper work of the mind. But for most of us, the majority of our waking hours are spent not in personal pursuits, but in the activity of earning a living. The path of integrity must therefore extend into our professional lives. How do we engage in the world of commerce and work without compromising the very principles we are striving to cultivate? This leads us to the next vital element of the path, the practice of right livelihood. As we align our words with kindness and our actions with non-harming, we build a powerful foundation of personal integrity. The practice of ethical conduct, or sila, ensures that the vessel of our life is sound and watertight. But this integrity must extend into the domain that occupies the largest portion of our waking lives, our work. The fifth factor of the noble Eightfold Path and the final pillar of this ethical training is right livelihood, or sama ajiva. This is the profound and often challenging practice of integrating our spiritual values with the way we earn our living. It asks us to make our work not a separate, compartmentalized activity driven solely by money or ambition, but a conscious and meaningful expression of our commitment to a peaceful and compassionate life. In our modern world, our profession is often deeply entangled with our identity. The question, "What do you do?" is often the first we ask a new acquaintance. Our jobs can be a source of great purpose or immense stress, a field for creative expression, or a place of ethical compromise. Right livelihood invites us to step back and examine this crucial area of our lives with the clear light of awareness. It challenges the conventional view that the primary purpose of work is simply to maximize income and status, suggesting instead that its purpose should be, at a minimum, to cause no harm, and at its best, to be of genuine service to others. The traditional teachings define right livelihood primarily by listing 5 kinds of trade that should be avoided. These are professions based on dealing in weapons, in living beings, which includes slavery, prostitution, and raising animals for slaughter, in the production of meat, in poisons, and in intoxicants. The common thread that runs through these 5 is clear. They all depend directly on creating suffering, causing harm, or fostering heedlessness in others. They are fundamentally at odds with the core intention of compassion. In our complex global economy, these ancient principles require thoughtful expansion. The trade in weapons today might not just mean manufacturing guns, but also working for corporations that profit from conflict, or developing technologies designed for oppression. The trade in poisons could be interpreted to include working in industries that knowingly pollute our environment with toxic chemicals, or marketing addictive and unhealthy products to vulnerable populations. The trade in intoxicants calls us to question involvement in businesses that prey on addiction, whether it's alcohol, gambling, or even the creation of digital platforms designed to be as psychologically addictive as possible. Furthermore, the principle of right livelihood asks us to look beyond the final product to the process itself. A company might produce a seemingly harmless product, but if it relies on unethical labor practices, exploits its workers, or engages in deceptive advertising, then working for that company involves participating in a system of harm If our role requires us to lie to customers, to cut corners in ways that compromise safety, or to engage in ruthless competition that destroys others, we are not practicing right livelihood. The how of our work is as important as the what. And this can sound like an impossibly high standard, and this is where the path's profound compassion and practicality become essential. The practice of right livelihood is not intended to create guilt or to demand that everyone immediately quit their job if it falls short of the ideal. For many, work is a matter of survival, of providing for a family, of meeting fundamental responsibilities. The path does not ask us to be reckless. Instead, it invites us on a journey, a gradual process of aligning our actions with our intentions, starting from wherever we are right now. The first step is simply honest reflection. We must look at our work with clear eyes, without defensiveness, and ask difficult questions. What is the true impact of the company I work for? Does my specific role contribute to harm or to well-being? What values does my work promote in the world? This awareness itself is a powerful and courageous act. From this awareness, the path unfolds not as a single, dramatic decision, but as a series of skillful choices. For some, a change in profession may be possible and necessary. This might be a long-term aspiration, involving retraining, saving money, and carefully planning a transition towards work that feels more meaningful and aligned. The very act of holding this intention and taking small steps towards it is a vital part of the practice. But for many, the practice must take place within the context of their current job. Right livelihood is not just a job title, it is an ethical orientation. You can bring the practice of right livelihood to almost any profession by focusing on the integrity of your own conduct. You can be the person in the meeting who speaks up for the ethical choice. You can be the manager who treats their team with kindness, fairness, and respect. You can be the employee who performs their duties with diligence, honesty, and a spirit of service. You can refuse to participate in projects that are deceptive. You can interact with customers and colleagues with the same truthfulness and gentleness you are cultivating in your personal life. In this way, you can become a force for positive change within your organization, transforming your workplace into a field of practice. Ultimately, right livelihood is about more than just avoiding harm. It is about seeking a positive vision for our work. It is the aspiration to use our precious time, energy, and unique talents to make a positive contribution to the world. This doesn't mean we all have to work for non-profits or become social workers. A carpenter who builds beautiful, sturdy homes with integrity is practicing right livelihood. A software engineer who creates a tool that helps people connect or learn is practicing right livelihood. An accountant who helps a small business thrive with honesty and skill is practicing right livelihood. When our work allows us to express our creativity, to solve problems, and to be of genuine service to others, it ceases to be a drain on our energy and instead becomes a source of it. It becomes integrated into our path, a way of generating joy and purpose, rather than a source of ethical conflict and stress. With this final pillar, the foundation of ethical conduct is complete. We have examined and taken responsibility for our words, our physical actions, and our professional lives. The hull of our ship is now strong, sealed against the leaks of harmful and divisive behavior. We have created a stable and safe vessel. But a ship, no matter how sturdy, accomplishes nothing by staying in the harbor. To cross the vast ocean to the far shore of peace, we must learn to harness the winds and steer our course. We need to cultivate the inner resources of energy, focus, and discipline. This leads us from the foundation of Sila to the dynamic training of the mind itself, the division of Samadhi, beginning with the vital practice of right effort. As we walk the path of ethical conduct, purifying our speech, our actions, and our livelihood, a deep and important question may arise from the quiet corners of our mind. It is a question rooted in our past. We may look back on our lives and see a landscape littered with moments of unkindness, with actions rooted in anger, with words spoken in haste, with choices made from a place of fear or greed. Having come to understand the law of karma, that intentional actions bring about corresponding results, we may begin to feel a sense of dread. Are we now prisoners of that past? Are we condemned to reap a harvest of suffering from the unskillful seeds we have already sown? Is our future merely a fixed echo of our past mistakes? The wisdom of the path offers a resounding and liberating answer. Number karma is not a rigid, unforgiving system of cosmic justice. It is not a life sentence. While it is true that our past actions condition our present reality, creating tendencies and shaping the circumstances we face, the present moment is always a point of profound freedom and power. The karmic process is more like a flowing river than a static stone tablet. While the river's current is influenced by the waters that have flowed from upstream, we, in the boat of the present moment, have the power to engage our own rudder and sail. With skillful effort, we can change our direction, navigate the currents, and ultimately transform the entire journey. Think again of the farmer tending the field of the mind. It is true that in the past, perhaps through ignorance, we have planted many weeds. Some of those weeds may be growing now, appearing as difficult emotions, challenging relationships, or unfavorable situations. We cannot simply unplant a seed that is already sprouting. The past cannot be erased. However, our power lies in what we do now. We can stop watering the weeds. We can stop giving our energy and attention to the old, unhelpful patterns of thought and reactivity. More importantly, we can begin to actively cultivate the soil around them. We can plant new seeds, seeds of loving kindness, of generosity, of mindfulness. We can plant so many wholesome seeds and tend them with such care that their vibrant growth eventually overshadows the old weeds, starving them of sunlight and nutrients. We can add so much fresh, clean water to the river that the muddy waters from the past become diluted to the point of being insignificant. This is the dynamic and hopeful nature of karma. The present action is always the most potent ingredient. To illustrate this power of transformation, there is no story more dramatic and inspiring in the Buddhist tradition than that of Angulimala. His name alone struck terror into the hearts of all who heard it, for it meant finger necklace. Angulimala was a notorious bandit and serial killer, a man so lost in violence that he wore a garland made from the severed fingers of his victims, adding a new one with each person he murdered. He was the embodiment of unwholesome karma, a force of pure terror who had already slain 999 people. One day, as the Buddha was walking near Angulimala's forest, the villagers warned him not to proceed, telling him of the monster who lay in wait. The Buddha, with his characteristic calm and fearlessness, continued on his path. Angulimala saw him from a distance and was astonished. No one ever dared to walk this path alone. Thinking this would be his 1000th victim, he drew his sword and began to run. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted from a distance, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, continuing to walk calmly, turned his head and replied with a voice of profound peace, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This simple statement struck Angulimala like a bolt of lightning. He did not understand its literal meaning, So he asked what the monk meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from causing harm to any living being. I have laid down the sword, but you have not stopped creating violence, hatred, and suffering for yourself and others. You are the one who is still running." In that moment, faced with a human being who showed no fear, only absolute peace and compassion, Angulimala's entire worldview crumbled. He saw the madness of his own life, the endless, frantic running of his own hatred. The weight of his horrific actions crashed down upon him, and in a moment of profound repentance and insight, he threw down his sword, knelt before the Buddha, and begged to be accepted as a follower. Seeing the deep potential for transformation within him, the Buddha accepted him into the monastic order. Now, the story could have ended there, as a simple tale of miraculous conversion. But the teaching on karma is more profound than that. Angulimala's ordination did not magically erase the consequences of his actions. The karmic seeds he had planted still had to bear their fruit. When he would walk into a village for alms, wearing the robes of a peaceful monk, people would recognize him. They would scream in terror and fury. They would throw rocks, sticks, and refuse at him, beating him until he was bloody and bruised. He would return to the monastery, his robe torn and his head bleeding, and the Buddha would say to him, "Bear it, brave one, bear it. You are experiencing in this very life the ripening of karma that could have caused you to suffer in states of immense pain for countless ages. This is a crucial lesson. The path of transformation does not grant us immunity from the consequences of our past, but it utterly changes how we meet them." Before, Angulimala would have reacted to such an attack with murderous rage, planting more seeds of hatred. Now, guided by the Buddha's teaching, he met the pain with patience, with forbearance, and with the understanding that this was the paying of an old debt. He did not create new suffering from his suffering. He diligently practiced meditation, and through his immense effort, he purified his mind so completely that he eventually became an arhat, a fully enlightened being who had severed all the roots of greed, hatred, and delusion. The man who was once a symbol of terror became a symbol of ultimate redemption. The story of Angulimala teaches us that no one is defined by their worst actions. No past is so dark that it can extinguish the light of our innate potential for awakening. Our karmic history is not a cage. It is simply the starting point for our present journey. It shows that with powerful intention and right understanding, the trajectory of a life can be altered in a single moment. It demonstrates that while we must have the courage to face the results of our past actions, we can do so with a wisdom that prevents them from creating new cycles of pain. This understanding of karma's fluidity is the essential fuel for our practice. It assures us that our efforts are never in vain. Every kind thought, every patient word, every generous action, no matter how small, is a wholesome seed planted in the field of our mind. It is a drop of fresh water added to the river. If a man like Angulimala, with the karmic weight of 999 murders, could use the power of the present moment to achieve the highest peace, then surely we, with our own unique burdens and histories, can make a profound and beautiful transformation in our own lives. The possibility of change is real. The question that remains is, how do we harness our energy to bring it about? What does it truly mean to make a skillful effort on this path to freedom? The inspiring story of Angulimala illuminates a profound truth. Transformation is possible for anyone, regardless of their past. Our karmic history is not a prison sentence, but simply the starting point of our journey. This liberating understanding provides the essential motivation for our practice, for it assures us that our efforts on the path are never in vain. With this hope as our fuel, we now arrive at the engine of the path itself. We move from the foundational training in ethical conduct into the dynamic cultivation of the mind, known as samadhi. The first factor in this training, and the sixth on the Eightfold Path, is right effort, or samma vayama. This is the art of intelligently and joyfully applying our energy to the project of our own liberation. When we hear the word effort, our modern culture often conjures images of struggle, of gritting our teeth and pushing through pain, of a relentless hustle that leads to burnout. This is not right effort. Right effort is not about aggression or force. It is skillful, precise, and balanced. It is more like the steady, patient, and wise work of a master gardener than the frantic charge of a soldier. The gardener knows that you cannot force a plant to grow by pulling on it. You can only create the optimal conditions for growth and then allow nature to take its course. Right effort is the art of creating the optimal conditions for a beautiful and peaceful mind. This practice, this skillful gardening of the mind, can be understood through four distinct, yet related, applications of our energy. The first of these is the effort to prevent. This is the protective, proactive dimension of our practice. The wise gardener does not wait for their precious plants to be overrun by pests. They build a fence. In the same way, we learn to guard the gateways to our mind, which are our five senses. We live in a world that is constantly trying to sell us things, to make us anxious, to distract us, and to provoke our outrage. The effort to prevent means making conscious choices about what we consume with our eyes, our ears, and our awareness. It means recognizing that binge-watching violent television shows may plant seeds of agitation and fear in our minds. It means understanding that endlessly scrolling through carefully curated social media feeds can cultivate feelings of envy and inadequacy. It means noticing that listening to or participating in cynical gossip can poison our worldview. This is not about isolating ourselves from the world in a sterile bubble. It is about practicing discernment. It is the wisdom to know that our mental state is precious and to consciously choose not to invite in stimuli that we know will disturb our peace and undermine our practice. It is the simple, compassionate act of building a fence around our inner garden. But no matter how strong our fence is, weeds will inevitably appear. The seeds of unwholesome states, like anger, greed, jealousy, and fear, lie dormant in the soil of our minds, conditioned by our past karma. This brings us to the second practice, the effort to abandon. When an unwholesome thought or emotion has already arisen, we apply our energy to skillfully remove it. This is not done through suppression. To suppress an emotion like anger is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and the moment we lose focus, the ball shoots up with even greater force. Suppression only strengthens the root of the weed. Instead, we practice abandoning. This is the gentle but firm act of uprooting. Through mindfulness, we first recognize the weed. Anger has arisen. We don't judge ourselves for it. We simply see it for what it is, an impersonal, painful, and unskillful mental state. Then, we withdraw our energy from it. We refuse to feed it by replaying the story of what made us angry. We don't indulge in fantasies of revenge or righteous indignation. Instead, we can apply an antidote, as we learned in the practice of right thought, consciously cultivating a feeling of loving kindness. Or we can simply turn our full attention to something neutral and grounding, like the physical sensation of our breath. The weed, starved of the water of our attention, withers and dies on its own. A garden, consisting only of a fence and empty, weeded soil, is not yet complete. The most joyful part of the gardener's work is the planting of beautiful things. This is the third practice, the effort to cultivate. This is the active and intentional generation of wholesome states of mind that are not yet present. We do not have to passively wait for feelings of joy, peace, or kindness to strike us like lightning. We can actively create the causes and conditions for them to arise. This can be done through formal meditation practices, such as deliberately cultivating loving kindness, wishing well for ourselves, for our loved ones, for neutral people, and even for those we find difficult. It can be done by intentionally practicing gratitude, taking time each day to reflect on the good things in our lives, no matter how small. It is the effort to see the good in others, to celebrate their successes, and to feel a sense of appreciative joy. By actively planting these wholesome seeds, we begin to change the entire ecosystem of our mind, making the soil richer and more fertile for happiness to grow. Once a beautiful flower has bloomed, the gardener's work continues. They must ensure it gets enough water and sunlight and protect it from harm. This is the fourth practice, the effort to maintain. When a wholesome state of mind has arisen, we apply our energy to sustain and develop it. In our distracted world, moments of peace or joy can be incredibly fleeting. A feeling of calm arises, and then the mind immediately jumps to a worry about the future or a regret about the past. The effort to maintain is the practice of noticing when a wholesome state is present and choosing to stay with it. We savor it. We allow it to permeate our body and mind. We investigate it, asking, what does this peace feel like? What conditions allowed it to be here? By giving our full, appreciative attention to these positive states, we strengthen their neural pathways. We are, in effect, watering the flowers, helping them to grow stronger, more resilient, and more easily accessible in the future. These four great efforts: preventing, abandoning, cultivating, and maintaining form the dynamic engine of our practice. But this engine requires a skilled operator who understands that energy must be balanced. The Buddha once used the beautiful analogy of tuning a lute. He explained that if the string is pulled too tight, it will snap. This represents the strained, aggressive, white-knuckled effort that leads to anxiety and exhaustion. If the string is too loose, it will not produce a sound when plucked. This represents the lax, lazy, and undisciplined mind that makes no progress. Only when the string is tuned just right, not too tight, and not too loose can it create beautiful music. Our effort on the path must be like this. It must be consistent, courageous, and diligent, yet simultaneously relaxed, joyful, and sustainable. It is a path of gentle, persistent, and intelligent engagement. This intelligent effort is what propels our ship forward, turning our ethical foundation and our intellectual understanding into a lived, breathing reality. But a powerful engine is of little use without a hand on the rudder, without a navigator who is constantly aware of the ship's position and the surrounding waters. To know which weeds to abandon, we must first be able to see them clearly. To know which flowers to cultivate, we must be aware that the seeds are available to be planted. This constant, moment-to-moment clarity, this unwavering awareness, is the very heart of mental discipline. It is the practice that steers our effort and illuminates our path. It is the practice of right mindfulness. We have arrived at the very heart of the path, the central faculty that illuminates all the others. We have built the sturdy, ethical ship of Sila. We have understood the hopeful possibility of transformation and have engaged the engine of right effort. But an engine, no matter how powerful, is useless without a skilled driver at the helm, one who is awake, alert, and aware of the present reality. This driver, this guiding intelligence, is right mindfulness, or samasati. It is the seventh factor of the path and the cornerstone of mental discipline. In the modern world, the word mindfulness has become a popular buzzword, often used to describe simple relaxation or stress reduction. But in its original context, it is something far more profound. It is a radical practice of presence, a courageous commitment to meet our life, moment by moment, exactly as it is. To truly understand right mindfulness, it is helpful to first clear away the popular misconceptions. Mindfulness is not about stopping our thoughts or emptying our mind. The mind produces thoughts naturally, and trying to force them to stop is a futile and stressful battle. The goal is not to have an empty mind, but a mind that is seen so clearly that it no longer controls us. Mindfulness is also not simply a relaxation technique, although a deep sense of calm is often a wonderful result of the practice. The primary aim of mindfulness is not calm, but clarity. It is the cultivation of a precise, unbiased awareness that sees things as they truly are. This can sometimes mean becoming aware of uncomfortable feelings or difficult truths. Finally, mindfulness is not an escape from reality. It is the exact opposite. It is a full, compassionate, and unwavering engagement with the reality of the present moment, freeing us from our habitual escape into fantasies about the future or reruns of the past. So, what is mindfulness? The most classic definition describes it as paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack these simple but profound words. Paying attention, on purpose, means that mindfulness is an intentional act. It is a conscious choice to direct our awareness, to take charge of this incredible faculty that so often runs on autopilot. In the present moment points to the radical nature of the practice. Our minds have a deeply ingrained habit of time travel. We spend countless hours lost in the past, ruminating on old conversations, replaying grievances, indulging in nostalgia, rocketing into the future, rehearsing for events that may never happen, planning, worrying, and fantasizing. The past is a memory. The future is a projection. The only time we are ever truly alive is right now. Mindfulness is the art of arriving in our own life. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to the raw, vivid, and immediate experience of this very moment. The final phrase, non-judgmentally, is the quality of heart that makes this practice transformative. It is the kindness and compassion we bring to our own awareness. As we watch our inner world, we commit to doing so without the overlay of criticism or commentary. When a feeling of anger arises, we simply note, "Anger is here," rather than adding, "Oh no, I'm such an angry person. I shouldn't be feeling this." When the mind wanders for the 100th time, we note wandering without the judgment. "I'm a terrible meditator. I can't do this." This non-judgmental stance is not a form of passivity. It is a prerequisite for clarity. It allows us to see our inner states for what they are, impersonal, changing phenomena rather than seeing them through the distorted lens of our likes and dislikes. A beautiful metaphor for this is the sky. Our awareness is like the vast, open, and unchanging blue sky. Our thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like the clouds that drift through it. Some clouds are dark and stormy, others are light and fluffy. They come, they stay for a while, and they go. The mistake we usually make is that we identify with the clouds. We believe we are the storm. The practice of mindfulness is to learn to rest as the sky, allowing the clouds to pass without resistance, observing their nature with a spacious and accepting presence. This may sound abstract, but the method for cultivating this quality of awareness is incredibly concrete and accessible. The foundational practice, used for thousands of years, is mindfulness of the breath. It is our training ground, our anchor to the present moment. The practice is simple. We begin by finding a posture that embodies both dignity and ease, whether sitting on a cushion on the floor or upright in a chair. We allow our eyes to gently close, and we bring our attention inward. We do not need to look for anything special. We simply bring our awareness to the physical sensation of our own breathing. We might feel it most clearly as the cool air passing in and out of the nostrils, or as the gentle rise and fall of the chest, or as the soft expansion and contraction of the abdomen. The instruction is not to think about the breath, but to feel it. We let the breath be completely natural. We are not trying to control it or change it in any way. We are simply resting our attention on this natural, rhythmic process that is always with us. Inevitably, within a few moments, we will discover that our mind has wandered. We set out to watch the breath, and now we find ourselves planning dinner, rehashing a conversation, or worrying about a work project. This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. The moment you realize your mind has wandered, that very moment of, aha, I've been lost in thought, is a moment of perfect mindfulness. It is a small victory of awareness. The practice is what you do next, gently, kindly, and without any judgment or scolding. You simply acknowledge where the mind went, and then you softly escort your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. This process will repeat itself over and over again. We rest with the breath, the mind wanders, we notice, and we gently return. Each return is like a single repetition in a workout for the brain. We are strengthening the muscle of attention and mindfulness. We are training ourselves with immense patience and compassion to come home to the present moment. This simple act of returning our attention to the breath is the foundation of mental freedom. It is the central skill that makes the rest of the path possible. It is this mindful awareness that allows us to see a weed of unwholesome thought as it arises, giving us the chance to abandon it, as we learned in Right Effort. It is this clarity that allows us to notice the subtle shift in our tone before it becomes harsh speech. It is this presence that allows us to feel the intention behind an action before we commit it. Mindfulness is the light that we shine into the inner workings of our own heart and mind. The breath is our universal home base, our training ground for developing this light. Once we have learned to stabilize our attention here, we can then begin to apply this same clear, non-judgmental awareness to every other aspect of our experience, starting with the very vessel that carries us through the world, the human body. Having established the breath as our steadfast anchor to the present moment, we now begin to broaden the scope of our awareness. We use the stable platform of mindfulness we have cultivated to embark on a deeper exploration of our own experience. The great journey of self-discovery in the Buddhist tradition is mapped out in 4 distinct territories, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first of these, the very ground upon which we stand, is the body. The practice is called Kayanupassana, the sustained, moment-to-moment contemplation of the body. This is a profound act of coming home. In our modern, thought-driven lives, we often treat our bodies as little more than taxis for our brains, inconvenient vehicles that get hungry, tired, and sick. We live in our heads, lost in a world of concepts, plans, and worries, largely disconnected from the living, breathing reality of our physical form. The practice of mindfulness of the body is a gentle and radical act of reunion, of learning to inhabit our physical selves with wisdom and compassion. We begin with the body for a simple reason. It is always in the present moment. Our thoughts may roam to ancient regrets or future anxieties, but the feeling of our feet on the floor, the sensation of air on our skin, the posture of our spine, these things are happening only now. The body is a direct, undeniable link to the here and now, a powerful antidote to the mind's tendency for time travel. It is also a vast storehouse of unprocessed experience. Our joys, our fears, and especially our stresses, are all held in the body as patterns of physical tension: the tight jaw, the clenched shoulders, the knot in the stomach. By bringing a kind and patient awareness to these areas, we can allow this stored energy to gently release. Finally, the body is a magnificent teacher of impermanence. It is a constantly changing landscape of sensations. An itch arises, stays for a moment, and vanishes. Warmth spreads through a limb. Aches and pains shift and transform. By observing this constant flux, we gain a direct, visceral understanding that nothing is solid or permanent, a truth that can liberate us from so much of our fear and clinging. The practice begins with the simple act of noticing our posture. Throughout the day, we can cultivate moments of awareness where we simply check in and ask, what is the body doing right now? Am I sitting, standing, walking, lying down? When you are walking, instead of being lost in thought, you can bring your attention to the physical sensations of walking, the lifting and placing of the feet, the feeling of the ground beneath you, the subtle shifting of balance. When you are sitting at your desk, you can feel the points of contact between your body and the chair, the curve of your spine, the position of your hands. This is not about judging or correcting your posture, but simply about being aware of it. This simple act of noticing brings a sense of dignity and presence to our ordinary movements, transforming them from unconscious habits into opportunities for mindfulness. A more formal and systematic way to cultivate this awareness is through the practice of the body scan. To do this, we find a comfortable position, often lying down on our back, to allow the body to be fully at ease. After a few moments of settling in and connecting with the breath, we gently guide our attention to a specific part of the body, often starting with the toes of the left foot. We bring our full, curious awareness to this small area. The intention is not to look for anything in particular, but simply to receive whatever sensations are present. Is there warmth, coolness, tingling, pulsing, pressure from a sock? Or perhaps there is no discernible sensation at all, just a kind of numbness. This, too, is a sensation to be aware of. We are not trying to change or fix anything. We are simply asking the question, what is the actual physical experience in this part of the body right now? After a few moments, we gently move our awareness to the sole of the foot, then the heel, the ankle, and so on, systematically and patiently, moving our beam of attention through the entire landscape of the body, the legs, the hips, the torso, the back, the arms, the hands, the neck, and finally, the head and face. As we do this, we will inevitably encounter areas of tension, discomfort, or even pain. Our habitual tendency is to either ignore these sensations or to tense up around them, creating more suffering. The practice of mindfulness invites a new response. When we arrive at a tight shoulder or an aching knee, we don't try to force it to relax. Instead, we breathe into the sensation. We surround it with a soft, spacious, and accepting awareness. We become curious about its qualities. Is it a sharp pain or a dull ache? Is it constant or does it pulse? By replacing our resistance with this kind curiosity, we change our relationship to the discomfort. Often, we find that the tension we add on top of the raw sensation is what causes most of the suffering, and as we learn to soften around it, the sensation itself may begin to change and release. As our practice deepens, we can engage in an even more profound contemplation of the body. We can learn to see it not as a solid, unified me, but as a dynamic interplay of elements. We can feel the solidity and weight of our flesh and bones, and recognize this as the earth element. We can become aware of the fluids in our body, the blood flowing, the saliva in our mouth, and recognize this as the water element. We can tune into the body's natural warmth, the energy of our metabolism, and see this as the fire element. And we can feel the breath and the subtle movements of energy within us, recognizing this as the air element. This is not a scientific analysis, but an experiential shift in perspective. It helps to loosen the tight grip of identification we have with this body. We begin to see that this form is not a permanent, solid self, but rather a temporary, conditioned manifestation of natural forces, borrowed from the earth for a short time. The fruits of this practice are both immediate and profound. By regularly tuning into the body, we release the chronic, unconscious tension that is a major source of our stress and fatigue. We become more grounded, less lost in the chaotic world of our thoughts. When anxiety strikes, bringing our attention firmly into the feeling of our feet on the ground can be a powerful anchor. We develop a greater intimacy with our physical selves, becoming more attuned to what our body truly needs, whether it's rest, movement, or a certain kind of nourishment. And most importantly, we experience a direct, undeniable insight into the nature of reality. We see for ourselves that everything is in flux, that nothing is permanent, and that this body we cling to so fiercely is not a solid self, but a beautiful, dynamic, and ever-changing process. As we become more skilled in observing this landscape of raw physical sensation, we begin to notice another, more subtle layer of experience that arises in every moment. We notice that every sensation, from the pain of a stubbed toe to the pleasure of a warm bath, comes with an immediate pre-verbal tag. It is instantly registered by the mind as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This immediate coloring of our experience, this feeling tone, is the second foundation of mindfulness. It is the crucial link between a raw physical sensation and the full-blown emotional reactions of craving and aversion that cause us so much suffering. Our journey inward now takes us from the landscape of the body to the investigation of these very feeling tones. We have learned to return to the body, to find an anchor in the solid, tangible reality of our own physical form through the breath and the simple fact of being here. This practice of mindfulness of the body is like finding solid ground after being lost in a storm of thoughts. It is the first step in coming home. But once we have found this ground, we begin to notice something else, something constantly flowing, constantly changing, a current that runs through every moment of our experience. This is the river of feeling, and learning to watch this river without being swept away is the next crucial stage of our journey inward. This is the practice of mindfulness, of feelings, or in the ancient language, Vedana. When we hear the word feeling, we often think of complex emotions like love, anger, jealousy, or joy. But in this practice, we are looking at something far more subtle, more fundamental. Vedana refers to the raw, immediate tone of any experience before the mind has woven a story around it. Every single moment, no matter how insignificant it may seem, has one of three feeling tones. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That is all. Think of it as the mind's first, most basic classification of reality. A soft breeze on a warm day is pleasant. The sudden, sharp pain of stubbing your toe is unpleasant. The sensation of your feet on the floor as you stand still is likely neutral. This stream of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones is flowing through us continuously, whether we are aware of it or not. The problem is, we are almost never simply aware of it. We are driven by it. This is one of the most profound and liberating insights of Buddhist psychology. It reveals the secret mechanism that keeps us trapped on the wheel of suffering. The process is automatic, unconscious, and incredibly fast. It begins with contact. An eye sees a shape, an ear hears a sound, the mind thinks a thought. Immediately following that contact, a feeling tone arises, Vedana, and right there, at that critical juncture, our programming takes over. If the feeling tone is pleasant, an immediate, subtle grasping occurs. A desire, a craving, known as tanha, is born. We want to hold on to it. We want more of it. We want to repeat it. The taste of a sweet fruit leads to the desire for another bite. The pleasure of a word of praise leads to a hunger for more validation. We cling. If the feeling tone is unpleasant, the opposite reaction is triggered just as quickly. Aversion arises. We want to push it away, to destroy it, to escape from it. The discomfort of sitting in traffic leads to frustration and anger. The sting of a critical remark leads to defensiveness and resentment. We resist. And if the feeling tone is neutral, we typically react with a form of ignorance. We zone out. We become bored. We look for a distraction, for something more stimulating, something pleasant, to replace the nothingness. We are so conditioned to react that we are even uncomfortable with the absence of something to react to. This relentless cycle of craving for the pleasant and aversion to the unpleasant, fueled by our ignorance of the neutral, is the very engine of our discontent. It is the second noble truth in action, the origin of suffering playing out in every moment. We spend our entire lives on this frantic chase, running towards what we like and running away from what we dislike, completely unaware that this very chase is the source of our exhaustion and stress. We believe that if we could just arrange our lives to have only pleasant experiences, we would finally be happy. But this is an impossible task, a fool's errand, because life, by its very nature, is a mixture of all three tones. The pleasant fades, the unpleasant inevitably arrives, and much of life is simply neutral. By constantly reacting, we are in a perpetual state of war with reality itself. The practice of mindfulness of feelings is the radical act of calling a truce in this war. It is the introduction of a pause, a sacred space between the feeling tone and our habitual reaction. The practice is not to stop feelings from arising. That is impossible. Feelings are natural, like the weather. The practice is to change our relationship to them. It is to learn to sit on the bank of the river and simply watch the currents flow by without feeling the compulsion to jump in. So how do we do this? We begin, as always, with the anchor of the breath. We settle the body and we allow the mind to become calm. Then, we gently widen our awareness to include the feeling tones that are passing through our experience. As a sensation arises, perhaps a tingling in your hand, an ache in your back, or the sound of a bird outside the window, you simply note its raw tone. You don't need to name the source, or judge it, or build a story around it. You simply label it, gently, in your mind. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. An itch appears on your arm. The raw sensation is unpleasant. Instead of immediately scratching it, which is the reaction of aversion, you just observe it. Unpleasant. You feel the raw energy of the sensation, its vibration, its texture. You watch it, and you notice that it changes. It may intensify, it may shift, it may fade away all on its own. You are not the itch. You are the awareness that is watching the itch. A memory of a happy moment arises in the mind, bringing with it a warm, pleasant feeling in the chest. Instead of getting lost in the memory and wishing you were back there, which is the reaction of craving, you simply note the feeling, pleasant. You allow it to be there. You feel it fully, but you don't cling to it. You let it be what it is, a passing cloud in the sky of your mind. You sit in a quiet room, and there is nothing particularly interesting happening. The feeling is neutral. Instead of reaching for your phone or turning on the television, which is the reaction of ignorance, you stay with the neutrality. Neutral. You explore it. What does neutral actually feel like? Perhaps it is not boredom. Perhaps it is a quiet, subtle form of peace. This practice is revolutionary because it short-circuits the entire chain of suffering at its weakest link. The link between Vedana and Tanha, between the raw feeling and the reactive craving or aversion. By simply noting, pleasant, pleasant, we see the feeling for what it is, a temporary visitor, and we don't give rise to the clinging that causes pain when the pleasure inevitably fades. By noting, unpleasant, unpleasant, we create a buffer of mindful space. We can tolerate the discomfort without reacting with anger or fear, which are often far more painful than the original sensation itself. We learn that we are strong enough to sit with discomfort. By noting, neutral, neutral, we discover a vast, untapped landscape of quiet presence in the ordinary moments of our lives. Imagine being at sea in a small boat. In our normal reactive state, every pleasant wave makes us want to chase it, and every unpleasant wave makes us panic and flail. We are constantly exhausted, constantly at the mercy of the water. Mindfulness of feelings is like learning to sit peacefully in the boat. We still feel the rise and fall of the waves. We are not denying their existence. We feel the pleasantness of a gentle swell, and we feel the unpleasantness of a choppy wave. But our inner posture has changed. We are no longer identified with the waves. We are the calm, steady occupant of the boat, observing the nature of the sea with wisdom and equanimity. This stability does not come from the sea changing for us. It comes from us changing our relationship to the sea. This is the freedom that is being offered. It is the freedom of non-reactivity. It is the profound peace that arises when we stop fighting with the flow of life and instead learn to observe its passing with a clear and compassionate heart. And as we become more adept at watching this river of feeling, we may begin to notice the more complex patterns that arise from it, the thoughts and emotions that are born from these simple tones. This brings us to the next layer of our inner world, the mind itself. Having learned to sit on the bank of the river, observing the constant flow of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings without being swept away, we now turn our gaze upward. The river of feeling, Vedana, often feeds the atmosphere of our inner world. The pleasant currents can give rise to sunlit skies. The unpleasant ones can gather dark storm clouds. And so, we lift our awareness from the river to the sky itself. We begin the practice of mindfulness of mind, or chitta. This is the practice of observing our own thoughts and emotions, not by getting lost in their stories, but by recognizing their very nature as they arise and pass away, like clouds drifting through the vast, open space of awareness. This is perhaps the most intimate and transformative stage of the journey, because we are so deeply identified with our minds. We don't just have thoughts, we believe we are our thoughts. We don't just experience emotions, we believe we are our emotions. When a wave of anger washes through us, we say, "I am angry." When a cloud of sadness descends, we say, "I am sad." When fearful thoughts race, we say, "I am an anxious person." This act of identification is the root of a profound and subtle form of suffering. By fusing our identity with the fleeting, impermanent weather patterns of the mind, we condemn ourselves to being tossed about by every change in the inner climate. We become the storm. We become the darkness. We forget the sky. The practice of mindfulness of mind offers a radical proposition. You are not the clouds, you are the sky. Your true nature, the core of your awareness, is like a vast, boundless, open sky. It is inherently clear, peaceful, and unstainable. The thoughts, moods, and emotional states that pass through it are merely clouds. Some are white and wispy, like moments of joy or peacefulness. Others are heavy, dark, and turbulent, like storms of anger, grief, or fear. But no matter how terrifying the storm, it is only a temporary event happening in the sky. It is not the sky itself. The sky is never damaged by the storm. The thunder does not break it. The lightning does not scar it. The clouds gather, the storm rages, and eventually it passes, leaving the sky just as pure and vast as it was before. The sky simply allows the weather to be what it is, providing the space for it to unfold and pass away. This is the model for our practice. We learn to rest as the sky, and we watch the weather of our own minds. We are not trying to stop the clouds from forming or force the stormy ones to go away. We are simply learning to recognize them for what they are. So when a familiar feeling of irritation begins to brew, instead of getting caught in the story of who is to blame and what you're going to say, you take an inner step back. You rest as the sky and you note, the mind with aversion is present, or simply, anger is here. You don't judge it. You don't condemn yourself for it. You observe it with a kind of gentle, scientific curiosity. What does this cloud of anger feel like in the body? Is there heat? Is there tension? What is its texture? By observing it in this way, you are no longer lost inside of it. You are the awareness that is witnessing it. You have ceased to be the storm and have become the sky that holds the storm. When a spiral of anxious thoughts begins, worrying about the future, replaying the past, you notice this activity. You gently label it. The mind is scattered, or worrying is present. You don't get into an argument with the thoughts, trying to reason them away. You don't follow each one down its rabbit hole. You simply see the whole pattern as a type of mental weather. This is a scattered mind. This is what it feels like. You breathe. You remain the sky. The very act of seeing the mind as scattered, without judgment, introduces a powerful element of calm. The same applies to all states of mind. When you find yourself endlessly scrolling through social media or craving a particular food, you can note, the mind with wanting is here, or craving is present. You see it as an impersonal energy, a cloud passing through, rather than a command you must obey. When you feel peaceful and focused during a quiet moment, you can also note that the mind is calm. The mind is concentrated. This is important. We are not just looking for the negative states. We are developing an impartial awareness of the entire spectrum of our mental life. By doing so, we begin to see it all as impermanent, as ownerless. These states do not belong to an essential me. They are simply conditioned phenomena, arising and passing away in the space of awareness. This practice of non-identification is the doorway to profound freedom. When you know you are the sky, you are no longer afraid of the weather. You have space to choose how you will respond, rather than being forced into a habitual reaction. An angry thought can arise, but you don't have to speak or act from that anger. You can let the cloud pass. A fearful thought can appear, but you don't have to believe its story. You can see it as just another dark cloud, and you can rest in the vast, fearless nature of the sky. This creates a space for wisdom to grow. As you watch your mental weather over time, you start to see the patterns. You might notice, whenever I feel criticized, this dark cloud of defensiveness appears. Or, when I haven't had enough sleep, the sky of my mind is much more prone to storms. This is insight. You are no longer a victim of your moods. You are becoming a wise student of your own mind, understanding its causes and conditions. This insight naturally gives rise to compassion. When you see a friend or a family member lost in a storm of anger, you no longer see an angry person. You see a person who is temporarily lost inside a mind with anger. You see their sky obscured by a dark cloud, and your heart naturally softens, because you know intimately what that experience is like. This practice is a gentle, continuous returning. 1,000 times a day, we will forget. We will get swept up by a thought. We will become the storm cloud, and we will believe its reality. The practice is not about never forgetting. It is about the gentle and compassionate act of remembering. Here I am, lost in a cloud again. And in that moment of remembering, you are already free. You are the sky once more. As we grow more accustomed to abiding as this spacious, witnessing presence, the clouds may still come, but they seem to part more quickly. The storms seem less violent. The periods of clear, open sky become more frequent and familiar. We discover that our mind has a natural capacity for stillness, and having cultivated this stability, this clear seeing, we are now ready to deepen it, to gather the light of our awareness into a focused, powerful beam. We are ready to explore the practice of true concentration. We have stood as the sky, allowing the clouds of thought and emotion to drift through our awareness without being carried away by them. In doing this, we have discovered a space, a quiet clearing in the dense forest of our inner world. This space, this newfound peace, is a profound gift, but it is not the final destination. It is the firm ground upon which we can now build something remarkable. Having cultivated a mind that is spacious, we now learn to make it powerful. We now learn to gather the soft, diffuse light of awareness and focus it into a steady, unwavering beam. This is the practice of Chan Dian, or right concentration. It is the art of cultivating an unshakable mind. When people hear the word meditation or concentration, they often imagine a struggle, a battle to empty the mind and force thoughts to cease. This is one of the most persistent and unhelpful myths about the path. The goal of concentration is not to stop thinking. To try and force the mind to be silent is like trying to flatten the waves of the ocean with an iron. It is a violent, frustrating, and ultimately futile act. It creates more tension, not less. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. The practice of concentration is not a war against the mind, but a gentle and loving training of the mind. It is an invitation for the mind to finally come to rest. Imagine you have found a young, wild puppy, full of restless energy. This puppy is your mind. It has been wandering for years, chasing after every sight and sound, digging in every patch of dirt, never staying still. If you were to shout at this puppy, to chain it down and demand that it stop moving, you would only create fear and resistance. A wise trainer knows a different way. You would create a comfortable spot for the puppy, a soft cushion, and you would gently place the puppy on the cushion. Inevitably, its old habits would take over, and it would wander off. The training is not in preventing the puppy from wandering. The training is in the act of seeing that it has wandered, and then gently, kindly, without any anger or judgment, picking it up and placing it back on the cushion. This is the entire practice of concentration. The soft cushion is our object of meditation. For most, the most reliable and accessible cushion is the breath. It is always with us, from the moment of birth to the moment of death. It is neutral, and it is intimately connected to our state of being. The puppy is our attention. The practice is simply to place the attention, the puppy, on the cushion of the breath. We choose one specific spot, perhaps the subtle sensation of air passing in and out of the nostrils, or the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen, and we invite our attention to rest there. And then, the inevitable happens. The mind wanders. A thought about an email you need to send arises. A memory from childhood surfaces. You begin planning dinner. A sound from outside catches your attention. The puppy has left the cushion. The critical moment is right here. In our untrained state, we might not even notice for minutes on end that we are lost in thought. But with practice, we begin to notice sooner. And the moment you realize, I am thinking, that is a moment of victory. That is a moment of mindfulness. You have woken up, and in that moment, the instruction is not to feel frustrated or to scold yourself for failing. That is the old habit. The new habit, the practice itself, is to simply acknowledge where the mind went, perhaps with a soft mental note like thinking or planning, and then, with the kindness of a loving parent, gently guide your attention back to the sensation of the breath. You do this again and again and again, 1,000 times in a single session. The practice is not measured by how long you can keep the mind on the breath. The practice is the returning. Every single time you notice the mind has wandered and you gently bring it back, you are strengthening a mental muscle. It is like a bicep curl for the brain. You are weakening the old, unconscious habit of distraction, and you are strengthening the new, conscious habit of focused attention. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The puppy starts to wander less. It begins to understand that the cushion is a safe and pleasant place to be. It learns to rest. The mind, in the same way, begins to settle. The frantic inner chatter, the constant background noise of our lives, begins to quiet down. This settling brings with it a profound sense of peace and tranquility, a state known as samatha. It is a deep replenishment for the nervous system. It is like coming out of a loud, chaotic, and relentlessly demanding city street and stepping into a deep, quiet, peaceful sanctuary. The mind is no longer fragmented and scattered in 100 different directions. It becomes unified, whole, and collected. This peace, however, is not the ultimate goal. It is the condition that makes the ultimate goal possible. The true power of a concentrated mind is not just that it is calm, but that it is clear. A mind that is agitated and distracted is like a lake with its surface whipped into a frenzy by the wind. The water is murky, and it is impossible to see what lies at the bottom. But when the wind of distraction dies down, the lake of the mind becomes still and clear. The sediment settles, and now, for the first time, you can see right through the surface to the very bottom. You can see the nature of reality with pristine clarity. A scattered mind is like the light of a bare bulb, shedding a diffuse glow in all directions, unable to illuminate anything in detail. A concentrated mind is like a laser beam. The same energy, the same light of awareness, is now gathered into a single, powerful, penetrating point. This laser-like mind can cut through the illusions that bind us. It has the power to see directly into the fundamental nature of our experience. It is the sharp instrument we need to perform the delicate surgery of insight. Therefore, concentration is not an escape from life. It is the preparation for engaging with life on the deepest possible level. We are not quieting the mind to check out. We are quieting the mind so that we can truly check in. We are sharpening the tool of our awareness so we can see beyond the surface of things. With this mind, now made calm, stable, and powerful through the practice of concentration, we are finally equipped for the great work of wisdom. We are ready to turn this clear, unwavering lens towards the very fabric of our existence, to investigate the essential truths that lead to final liberation from all suffering. We have arrived at a place of stillness. Through the patient practice of concentration, the turbulent waters of the mind have settled, becoming calm and clear. The scattered light of our awareness has been gathered into a focused, powerful instrument of seeing. Now, with this sharpened tool, we are ready to look. We are ready to turn this precise and steady lens away from our stories and opinions and towards the very fabric of existence itself. And what is the first, most fundamental truth that comes into focus when we look with this newfound clarity? We see, on every level, in every corner of our experience, a single, universal, and inescapable law. The law of anicca, the truth of impermanence. Intellectually, this is not a surprise. We all know that seasons change, that flowers bloom and wither, that we are born and one day we will die. We nod our heads in agreement that nothing lasts forever. But this intellectual understanding is like reading a description of fire. It is not the same as feeling its heat. The wisdom of impermanence is a felt, lived, cellular understanding that everything, without exception, is in a state of constant flow. It is the realization that reality is not a collection of solid, fixed nouns, but a river of dynamic, interconnected verbs. Nothing is. Everything is becoming. On the most obvious level, we see this in the world around us. Our relationships evolve, friendships deepen or drift apart. Our careers rise and fall. The technology that seems revolutionary today will be obsolete tomorrow. The very body we inhabit is a testament to this law, moving from the dependency of infancy through the vitality of youth into the slow decline of old age. But with our concentrated mind, we begin to see this truth on a much more subtle and intimate level. We notice that our moods are in constant flux. A pleasant feeling of joy can give way to a flicker of irritation in a single moment. Our thoughts, which we take so seriously, are nothing more than a fleeting parade, appearing from nowhere, lingering for an instant, and vanishing again. Even the physical foundation of our being is a waterfall of change. Scientists tell us that nearly every cell in our body is replaced over a period of years. The person you were 7 years ago, physically, no longer exists. The person who started listening to this very sentence is already gone, replaced by the one who is hearing these words now. The core of our suffering, the deep, persistent dissatisfaction of life, does not arise from the fact of change itself. Change is neutral. It is simply the way things are. Suffering arises from our resistance to this truth. It is born from our profound and deeply ingrained demand that reality conform to our desire for permanence. We try to build our house on the surface of a moving river. We experience a moment of happiness, a perfect sunset, a loving embrace, and immediately, our mind clings to it. We try to freeze the frame, to possess the moment, and make it last forever. But the river of time flows on, and the moment passes. Our clinging to what is already gone creates a tension, a friction, and we call that friction sorrow. We experience a moment of pain, a difficult emotion, a sickness, and we immediately resist it. We push it away, we fight against it, demanding that it disappear. But this resistance is also a form of clinging, a clinging to the idea of a life without pain. This battle against the current of reality is what exhausts us. There is no story that illustrates this more poignantly than that of Kisagotami. When her only child died, she was consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness. She refused to accept the reality of what had happened, clinging desperately to the lifeless body, going from person to person seeking medicine that could reverse death. Her suffering was immense, born from the violent collision of her desire for permanence with the unyielding truth of impermanence. When she came to the Buddha, he did not offer her a comforting platitude or a philosophical lecture. He gave her a practice. He told her he could help, but first, she must bring him a single mustard seed from a house where no one had ever died. Filled with a desperate hope, she began her journey. She went from door to door, and at every house, people were willing to give her a seed. But when she asked the vital question, has anyone in this family, a parent, a child, a spouse, ever died? The answer was always the same. One family had lost a daughter, another had lost a father, another an uncle. House after house, the story repeated itself. No home was untouched by loss. As the day wore on, the truth began to dawn on her, not as an idea, but as a profound, unshakable realization. Her personal, unbearable tragedy was not in fact personal. It was universal. The law of impermanence had not singled her out for punishment. It was simply the law. It governed all life, touching every family, every person, in every home. In that moment of seeing, something shifted. Her frantic, desperate clinging began to soften. Her grief, once a sharp and isolating agony, was transformed into a deep and spacious compassion, a connection to the shared sorrow of all humanity. She understood. She returned to the Buddha without the mustard seed, but with something far more precious, the wisdom of anicca. This is the wisdom we cultivate in our own practice. As we sit in meditation, we watch the breath. We notice that the in-breath arises. It exists for a few moments, and then it ceases, making way for the out-breath. Each breath is a miniature life, a perfect lesson in arising and passing. We watch our feelings. A pleasant sensation appears. We note it, and we watch as it dissolves. An unpleasant ache arises. We observe it without resistance, and we see that it too changes and eventually fades. We are training the mind to stop grasping, to stop resisting, and simply to observe the natural, ceaseless dance of experience. This wisdom is not a cause for nihilism or despair. It is the key to true liberation and a profound appreciation for life. When we truly understand that everything is impermanent, we stop taking things for granted. We know that this very day, this very moment, will never come again, and so we learn to inhabit it more fully. We love the people in our lives more deeply, not by clinging to them, but by appreciating their precious, fleeting presence right now. We learn to let go of past grievances, knowing that holding on to them is like trying to carry a river in our arms. The deep, experiential seeing of impermanence dissolves our attachment to outcomes. It allows us to engage with life, with passion and purpose, but with a light touch, knowing that all things will pass. It is the end of our war with time. But as we sit on the riverbank, watching this constant flow, a powerful question begins to surface. If the body is always changing, if feelings are a fleeting stream, if thoughts are just passing clouds, and moods are like the weather, if everything I once took to be me is in constant flux, then where, in all of this change, is the solid, permanent self? Where is the unchanging I that is having these experiences? This radical inquiry, born from the heart of impermanence, leads us directly to the next great truth, the most subtle and liberating insight of all, the wisdom of no, self, of anatta. We have stood on the bank of the great river of impermanence, anicca, and have seen that everything we once thought was solid is in a state of constant, ceaseless flow. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts all are like waves rising and falling in a great ocean. This profound seeing naturally gives birth to a radical question, one that strikes at the very heart of our identity. If all the components of my experience are changing, where is the permanent, unchanging me that is experiencing them? This inquiry is the gateway to the deepest, most subtle, and most liberating truth of the path. It is the wisdom of anatta, the truth of no self. Let us be very clear from the outset, for this is a teaching that can be easily misunderstood. The wisdom of anatta is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not a cold, nihilistic philosophy of nothingness. You are here. You are experiencing these words. The teaching is not about negation, but about clarification. It gently points out that we do not exist in the way we think we do. Our most fundamental assumption about life, that there is a solid, separate, continuous I at the command center of our experience, is a powerful and convincing illusion. And this illusion, this case of mistaken identity, is the deepest and most hidden root of our anxiety, our fear, and our conflict. To see through this illusion, the wisdom traditions invite us to become investigators, to take a closer look at what we call a self. What is this me? When we look, we find that it is composed of 5 ever-changing processes, known as the 5 aggregates. First, there is form, the physical body itself, which we now know is a river of impermanent cells. Second, there are feelings, the constant stream of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones. Third, there is perception, the mental process that identifies and labels things blue, loud, soft. Fourth, there are the mental formations, which include all of our thoughts, opinions, beliefs, moods, habits, and intentions. And fifth, there is consciousness, the raw capacity of awareness itself, the light that allows us to see, hear, taste, touch, and think. These 5 processes are undeniably happening, but the teaching of anatta asks, are any of them the permanent, unchanging you? Is your body the real you? If so, which one? The infant body, the teenage body, the body you have now, or the one you will have in 20 years? Clearly not. Are your feelings the real you? If so, you would cease to exist when a happy feeling ends and a sad one begins. Are your thoughts the real you? A thought is the most fleeting thing imaginable. So where is the self? We assume it is the CEO, the owner, the ghost in the machine, who is coordinating all these processes. But when we look with a quiet and concentrated mind, we cannot find it. We find only the processes themselves. The ancient texts offer a beautiful and clarifying metaphor. A great king named Milinda once met a sage named Nagasena and asked him his name. The sage replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was just a designation, a convenient name. and that no permanent person could be found. The king was baffled. He asked, "If no person exists, who is it that wears these robes and eats this food?" The sage then asked the king how he had arrived. "By chariot," the king replied. Nagasena then began his gentle deconstruction. He asked, "Your Majesty, is the axle the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Are the wheels the chariot? Is the frame the chariot? Are the reins the chariot?" To each question, the king replied, "Number." Nagasena then asked, "Are all of these parts together? Right now, the chariot?" "Yes," the king said. The sage then delivered the crucial insight. "And yet, chariot is just the name we give to this specific assembly of parts. There is no separate, independent chariot essence that exists apart from the wheels, the axle, and the frame. It is a concept, a convention." End of 12. And so it is with the self. We are this assembly. We are the 5 aggregates coming together in a unique and temporary pattern. Self is the convenient name we give to this bundle of body and mind. But there is no unchanging driver in the chariot. There is just the chariot, moving along. Why is realizing this so profoundly liberating? Because most of our human suffering is generated by the frantic, lifelong, and exhausting effort to protect, defend, and gratify this illusory self. Think of it. We live in constant, low-grade fear for the safety and survival of this me. We fear its aging, its sickness, its death. We are driven by a hunger to aggrandize this me, to accumulate possessions, titles, and praise to make it feel more solid and important. And we go to war to defend this me. When someone criticizes our opinion, we feel that we have been attacked, and we react with anger and defensiveness. We create conflict with other people, who are also just bundles of changing aggregates, desperately trying to defend their own illusory self. Our life's energy is consumed by being the unpaid bodyguard for a phantom. The wisdom of anatta invites us to retire from this stressful job. When we see that the self is not a solid thing, but a fluid process, the whole dynamic changes. The fear of death begins to lose its sting. What is it that dies? A process simply changes. It is like a wave in the ocean. A wave might fear its own demise as it approaches the shore, but when it realizes that its true nature is not wave, but water, that it is one with the entire ocean, what is there to fear? It is not an annihilation, but a homecoming. Putting down the burden of the self brings an incredible lightness of being. You no longer have to carry the weight of being important, of being right, of maintaining a perfect image. You can afford to be wrong. You can listen to criticism without feeling personally attacked. You can be generous without needing recognition. You are free to simply respond to life, moment by moment, without the constant, chattering filter of, what does this mean for me? Most beautifully, as the imaginary walls of the separate self dissolve, the heart naturally opens. When you are no longer a fortified castle under constant threat, you can lower the drawbridge. You see that your own anxieties, your own joys, your own sorrows are not fundamentally different from anyone else's. They are all part of the same human flow, the same dance of the aggregates. This direct seeing of our shared nature is the fertile ground from which boundless compassion and authentic connection grow. We stop seeing a world of separate, competing others and begin to see a family of fellow processes, all doing their best to navigate the currents of life. This is the great freedom of anatta. It is not the destruction of you, but the destruction of the prison of me you have mistaken for yourself. It is the discovery that you are not the small, isolated wave, but the entire, boundless ocean. And when the heart realizes this vast, interconnected nature, it no longer needs to grasp or to push away, it can finally open. It can finally learn to love without limit. And it is to this active, boundless opening of the heart that we now turn. We have journeyed deep into the heart of wisdom. We have seen the truth of impermanence, that all things are a ceaseless flow. We have peered into the nature of the self and discovered not a solid, separate entity, but an interconnected, ever-changing process. This wisdom can feel vast, even stark. It has deconstructed the very foundations of who we thought we were. The prison of the separate self has been exposed, its walls shown to be imaginary. And now, standing in this newfound open space, a question arises. What now? What do we cultivate in this field of freedom? The answer is not another intellectual concept. The answer is a quality of the heart. For when the illusion of separation dissolves, the truth of profound connection dawns. And the natural expression of this connection, the very fragrance of wisdom, is a boundless and unconditional love. This is the practice of metta and karuna, the cultivation of a limitless heart. Wisdom and compassion are said to be the two wings of a bird. Both are essential for flight. Wisdom, without a compassionate heart, can become cold, arid, and disconnected. Compassion, without the clarity of wisdom, can be sentimental, misguided, and ultimately ineffective. The journey we have taken through the truths of anicca and anatta provides the wing of wisdom. It shows us why we should feel connected, because fundamentally, we are connected. The practices of metta and karuna are the other wing. They are the method for actively feeling and strengthening this connection in our own hearts. They are what wisdom feels like when it comes alive. We begin with metta, which is often translated as loving kindness. This is not the conditional, grasping love of romance, nor is it mere sentimentality. Metta is a steady, unconditional, benevolent goodwill. It is a simple, powerful, and sincere wish for all beings to be happy and well. Imagine the sun in the sky. It shines its warmth down on everyone and everything without discrimination. It shines on the beautiful flowers and the thorny weeds, on the saints and the sinners, on the rich and the poor. It does not ask if a being is worthy of its warmth. It simply shines. Metta is the cultivation of this inner sun. It is the most powerful antidote to the poisons of anger, irritation, resentment, and ill will. It is the gentle rain that softens the hard, dry ground of the heart. The practice of cultivating metta, or metta bhavana, is a gentle and systematic training, and it always begins in one crucial place, with ourselves. We cannot offer water to others from a well that is dry. We cannot share a peace we do not have. For many of us, this is the most difficult step, as we are so often our own harshest critics. So we begin by finding a quiet posture, closing our eyes, and gently offering these wishes to ourselves. We repeat these phrases silently, like a gentle mantra. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I be happy and truly content. May I live with ease, free from struggle. We are not trying to force a feeling. We are simply planting the seeds, watering them with our sincere intention. Once we have spent some time offering this kindness to ourselves, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a beloved friend, a benefactor, or someone for whom we feel great respect and gratitude. It is easy to feel warmth for this person. We hold their image in our mind, and we extend the very same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We let our heart radiate this genuine goodwill towards them, feeling the natural warmth that arises. Then, we stretch the heart further. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see regularly, but have no strong feelings about the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers the mail. We see them not as a function, but as a living being who, just like us, wants to be happy. And we extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be well. This practice begins to break down the walls of indifference that we build around ourselves. Now comes the most transformative, and sometimes the most challenging, stage. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us. This is not an exercise in condoning harmful actions or forcing a false forgiveness. It is a profound act of heart training. We recognize that this person's harmful actions are born from their own suffering, their own anger, their own fear. They are trapped in their own prison. Seeing this, we offer them the wish, not for their actions, but for their own heart to be healed. May you too find peace. May you be free from the anger and hatred that cause you and others so much pain. This is the ultimate alchemy, turning the poison of resentment into the medicine of a compassionate heart. Finally, we let the circle become boundless. We radiate these wishes of metta outwards in all directions, to our family, our friends, our neighbors, our city, our country, to all beings on this earth, human and animal, to beings seen and unseen, near and far, in all realms of existence. We let our heart become a sun. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings everywhere live with ease. Flowing naturally from this metta is its inseparable companion, karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for all beings to find happiness, karuna is the tender, trembling wish for all beings to be free from suffering. It is the heart's response to pain. When we see a child fall, when we hear of a friend's loss, when we witness injustice in the world, the heart that is open feels a tremor. That tremor is karuna. It is what motivates us to reach out a hand, to offer a listening ear, to take action, to alleviate pain where we can. It is born from the wisdom that says, "Your suffering is not separate from my suffering." It is the ultimate expression of our shared humanity, our shared existence. These practices are not about pretending. They are a form of cultivation. We are not waiting for love and compassion to strike us like lightning. We are actively creating the conditions in our hearts and minds for them to grow, day by day, moment by moment. We are watering these divine seeds that exist within all of us. This is the beautiful paradox of the path. The deep seeing into the emptiness of a separate self does not lead to a cold void. It leads to a radiant fullness. It empties the heart of the small, fearful, grasping self, and in its place arises a boundless love for all that lives. With a mind made clear through wisdom and a heart made warm through metta and karuna, we are no longer practicing a philosophy. We are learning a new way to live. The final step is to take this transformed mind and heart off the meditation cushion and learn how to walk with it, how to live from it, in every moment of our ordinary, precious lives. We have journeyed together through a profound landscape. We began by daring to look directly at our own suffering, the universal sickness of dissatisfaction that runs like a thread through our modern lives. We traced its origins, not to the world outside, but to the inner mechanisms of craving and aversion. We discovered the breathtaking possibility of freedom, the cessation of this suffering, and we were given a map to that freedom, the noble Eightfold Path. We have explored this path in detail, from the wisdom of seeing reality as it is, to the discipline of training our minds, to the boundless opening of the heart. And now, we arrive at the most important part of the journey, the part where the map is put away and the walking begins. The question is no longer what the path is, but how do we walk it right now, in the midst of our complex, messy, beautiful, and ordinary lives? How do we integrate this wisdom into our reality? The greatest misunderstanding of a spiritual path is to treat it like a hobby, something we do for an hour a day on a meditation cushion, separate from the other 23 hours of our life. The Eightfold Path is not a hobby, it is an art of living. It is a complete redesign of our way of being in the world. It is not about escaping life, but about inhabiting it with a skillfulness, a clarity, and a compassion that we never thought possible. Every moment, every interaction, every challenge becomes the practice ground. The office, the kitchen, the freeway, these are our monasteries. Washing the dishes, answering an email, talking with our children, these are our meditations. Let us explore how this works with some real-world examples. Imagine a common scenario. You are in a meeting at work. You have poured your energy into a project, and a colleague publicly criticizes your work, pointing out a flaw in a way that feels dismissive and personal. The old, habitual reaction is automatic. A surge of heat, a clenching in the jaw. The mind immediately begins its defensive monologue, crafting rebuttals, feeling attacked, and perhaps even plotting a subtle revenge. This is the path of suffering. Now, what does it look like to walk the noble path in this exact moment? It begins with right mindfulness. Before you say a word, you take a breath. You become the sky, not the storm. You notice the raw sensations, the heat in your face, the rapid heartbeat, the tension in your shoulders. You silently note the feeling tone, unpleasant, unpleasant. You note the mind state, anger is present, the self feels attacked. This simple, non-judgmental awareness creates a sacred pause. It is the space between stimulus and reaction, and in this space, freedom is born. In that space, right understanding and right thought can arise. You remember the wisdom of anicca. This feeling of anger is impermanent. It will pass. You remember anatta. The attack is not on a solid, permanent me, but on a temporary collection of ideas and feelings. You might even see your colleague through the lens of compassion, recognizing that their critical nature likely stems from their own insecurity, their own suffering. You then consciously practice right thought. You let go of the desire to harm, and you gently replace the thoughts of ill will with a thought of metta. May you be free from the insecurity that causes you to act this way. May I be free from this anger. Later, you practice right speech. The old way would be to gossip about the colleague, to build alliances, to complain. The path of wisdom means you speak only words that are true, kind, necessary, and beneficial. If you choose to address the situation directly with your colleague, you do so with the intention of creating understanding, not of winning a battle. You use I statements, born from mindfulness. When you said that in the meeting, I felt hurt and defensive. I would like to understand your perspective better. End quote. This is supported by right action and right livelihood. Your actions are harmless. You refrain from sending a passive-aggressive email or subtly undermining their work. Your commitment to an ethical way of living provides a foundation of integrity that keeps you steady. And all of this is powered by right effort. The gentle, persistent intention to abandon unskillful states and cultivate skillful ones. Finally, the stability you have cultivated through right concentration, your meditation practice, is what makes all of this possible. It is the anchor that keeps your boat from being swept away by the storm of reactivity. You have met a difficult situation not with more conflict, but with wisdom and grace. Let's take another, more internal example. You receive a frightening health diagnosis from a doctor. The news is unexpected, and the future suddenly feels uncertain and threatening. The habitual mind immediately floods with fear, despair, and catastrophic stories. The question, "Why me?" echoes in the mind. Here too, the path is our guide and our refuge. Right mindfulness is your first aid. You feel the raw terror in your body, the constriction in your chest, the cold knot in your stomach. You do not try to suppress it, nor do you let it consume you. You breathe with it. You acknowledge it. Fear is here. This is what fear feels like. You watch the catastrophic thoughts as clouds passing in the sky, without having to believe every one of them. Your breath is your anchor in this terrifying storm. Right understanding provides the context. You remember dukkha, that sickness, old age, and death are not a personal failure, but a fundamental, unavoidable part of life. Just as Kisa Gautami discovered, you remember anicca, that health and sickness are changing conditions. This does not erase the pain, but it removes the layer of personal injustice. This is happening to the body, a natural process, not to a solid, permanent me. This subtle shift in perspective can be a source of immense strength. With this understanding, you practice right thought. You gently turn the mind away from cycles of despair and towards metta for yourself. You place a hand on your heart and offer yourself kindness. May I have the strength to meet this challenge. May I be free from fear. May I find peace in the midst of this uncertainty. You practice right action by wisely engaging with your situation, seeking medical advice, caring for your body with kindness, allowing yourself to rest. Your right speech is honest and clear with your loved ones and doctors, neither exaggerating nor minimizing your reality. And your right effort is the moment-to-moment choice to cultivate courage and peace, even for just a single breath, rather than dwelling in despair. Your formal practice of right concentration becomes a sanctuary, a time each day to reconnect with the silent, peaceful sky of awareness that is untouched by the storms of the body and mind. The path is not about becoming a perfect, emotionless being. It is about becoming a wise and compassionate friend to yourself and to the world. It is about learning to navigate the inevitable challenges of life with less fear, less anger, and more freedom. Every single moment is an opportunity. The traffic jam is a chance to practice patience. The boring meeting is a chance to practice mindfulness of the body. A difficult conversation is a chance to practice right speech. There is no moment of your life that is outside the path. It is always and only right here. The journey begins and ends with this very breath. We began this journey together by acknowledging a feeling so common in our world, the feeling of running on a wheel, endlessly striving, endlessly exhausted. We looked squarely at the universal experience of suffering, not as a personal failure, but as a fundamental human condition. From that honest starting point, we embarked on a path of discovery. We traced the roots of our discontent, not to the world outside, but to the deep habits of craving and aversion within our own minds. We glimpsed the profound truth that an end to this struggle is possible, that a state of deep and lasting peace is not a fantasy, but a potential available to every one of us. And finally, we were given a clear and practical map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide to transforming our entire way of being, from our thoughts and words to our very perception of reality. We have deconstructed the self and found not a solid, fragile entity, but an open, interconnected process. We have seen that wisdom and compassion are not separate ideals, but two wings of the same bird, destined to fly together. Now, at the end of this exploration, we arrive at the single most important message. The peace we have been seeking, the freedom we have been longing for, was never waiting for us at some future destination. It was never hidden in a different career, a different city, or a different relationship. It was never something to be acquired, earned, or won from the outside world. Peace is the natural state of your own heart and mind when the clouds of confusion are allowed to part. It is the clarity of the water once the mud of grasping and hatred has been allowed to settle. The path is not about changing the world to fit our desires. It is about purifying the lens of our own perception so that we can meet the world exactly as it is, with a wise mind and an open heart. Liberation is not an escape. It is a homecoming. And so, you are left here at the end of this journey with a profound power in your own hands. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to wait for a special time or place. Every moment of your life is the path. Every breath is an opportunity to return. Every challenge is an invitation to practice. You have the map. You have the capacity. The choice to walk is yours in every instant. Let go of the search for something more and rest in the simple truth of what is. The entire journey of 1,000 miles, the entire path to the end of suffering, begins and ends with a single, simple step. And that step is always the same. The gentle, loving return to the rhythm of your own breath, right here, right now.